Okay, guys, it's been a little while since we looked at a Destiny video, but the title caught my attention. It says ABBA agrees with Sneako, comes down hard, capital, on leftists in impromptu debate. So I'm kind of interested. I see that there's a FD signifier here. Interesting guy. I haven't seen too much of his content before. I know that he's kind of gone against like ABBA and called them like I think manosphere adjacent or something, which is interesting. I don't know who Kidology is though. Apparently they're somewhat big. Oh, it looks like they might be conservative. I don't really know. Or I don't know. Let's see what we got here.
He's telling her like, don't talk to him. He's like running around in live stream chats, telling her like, don't talk to this guy.
Destiny or
no, that's Sneako meme where he had like all of the lefty streamers lined up and they had like the same similar haircut and a bunch of weird looking things. That starts to ring true every time I see it.
People
streamers lined up and they had like the same similar haircut and a bunch of weird looking things. That starts to ring true every time I see it.
I feel like
all of the lefty streamers lined up and they had like the same.
I think aren't Ab and Preach part of this meme now too? And Moist Critical? How come they cut those out? Oh, whatever.
Similar haircut and a bunch of weird looking things. That starts to ring true every time I see it.
on the left don't sell you a lifestyle. People on the right do. If I say like, what does it mean to live as a conservative? I've got like the Red Pill gives you this whole guide of living. If I say, what does it mean to live as a progressive?
I'm not trying to be vouched like I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I said. Red Pill adjacent.
Okay, yeah. Jordan Peterson counts as a
That's not what I said. You don't listen very well. So every time you reply, it has nothing to do with what I just said.
tend to be more empowering and give more agency than liberals. There's literally the phrase, conservatives never see themselves as poor people, just temporarily embarrassed billionaires. What part about that do you disagree with? Health at every size is saying you can be healthy and beautiful no matter what size you are, and it's okay. It's okay to be a victim of your body, or it's okay to be a victim of hypothyroidism. It's okay to be a victim of your fast metabolism. There's nothing you can do to change it. That's okay.
I mean, listen, I don't know. That's just not what I get from health at every size. I feel like that's the negative part about it. Maybe that's what it means, but to me, health at every size is more of saying like, hey, you can be healthy at any size, but that doesn't mean that you should always stop trying to get healthier. Because like if you're 20 years old and you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, your levels are good, like, yeah, you could still be obese and it's just not impacting your life. Maybe I'm just reappropriating that, but that's what it kind of means to me. Like for me, I'm trying to get healthier regardless of what my weight is, which obviously I have to lose weight for that. But like, you know, let's say I get down to 300 pounds and like my levels are solid. I'm going to be happy with that for now. I might have to lose more later, but it's more about being like, you know, generally healthy. You don't have to be perfect. You should just always try to do a little bit better than before and make better decisions. Okay.
The more extreme version of health at every size of that. It's not a celebration of agency. It's a direct contradiction.
Slogan.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I think
I actually noticed this from the video essayists on YouTube. I think I made the mistake of watching a few of their videos.
Oh, shit.
And
you didn't react to them?
I was asking myself why a lot of these video essays who are like super left-leaning are not bigger or more popular, generally speaking. I think two of the reasons I discovered is I think the language that they use is extremely unappealing to a lot of folks. And so it kind of turns them off just from a cultural standpoint. And then I think, secondly, actually, it's probably three reasons. I think the other thing is they, much like Brittany, code so much of their discussions on serious topics and so many caveats and like such an effort to not appear problematic that it almost feels like they're saying nothing by the end of it, which makes like listening to them incredibly frustrating and uninteresting. And I think the last thing is what Sneako described, which I think most of them are just kind of
interesting. Maybe. I think I understand what he's saying. It's just not relatable. That's possible. Okay.
I'm not to say this. Yeah. It just feels like they're so lame as hell. Like, I remember someone, like, this always comes up, but it's like, oh, well, you know, the left has plenty of masculine examples that you can follow that would, like, I'm like, bro, no young dude is looking at leftist YouTubers or, like, leftist creators online, generally speaking, and thinking, like, oh, I would want to emulate these guys in their way of life. So I think...
maybe. There's probably some. Like, a lot of people probably want to be like Hassan. Well...
Everything about the way that they live, the way they talk, it's hard for most people to connect with.
The reason why
I think there's a difference between saying I want to be like that versus I want to connect with that, right? So if somebody's like really rich, you might want to be that, but that doesn't mean you can connect with that, right? That is one of the issues with being like Hassan is just not very relatable because he is so fucking terminal. Like I saw the clip where he was like, I live well below my means. No, you don't. Like he said something about like he lives well below his means, or no, it was something about how he lives like a basic lifestyle, but the guy has like fucking $100,000 cars and shit like that. And it's like, you know, you don't live like, I forget what he said. What was the specific phrase that he had said? It was like suggesting that he doesn't like engage in like luxury spending. I was just fucking die already. Sorry. I forgot what he was that he said. A lot of them do like seem to come off as like morally grandstanding. Another problem too is like they don't try to like empathize with conservative creators ever. They don't try to empathize with that conservative perspective. You know, maybe conservatives don't have a great because it might be considered insensitive or something. I don't really know. What the fuck did I just do?
Current terminology is a bit cringe, is because it's taking over from things that were a bit racist. So we've gone from a bit racist to a bit cringe. But it's like when we're talking about large groups of people, we kind of get stuck. I mean, my nan still says coloured people, and I have to try and remember, probably don't say that. But she is my nan. She doesn't mean it badly, you know, it's whatever.
Well,
when you're talking about big groups of people,
Hey,
what else
when I go to Disney, I'm a colored person because I get way too much sun, and the color I am is red. I burn. So I have to put a lot of sunscreen on. So it's rough, bro. It's rough.
do these types of things?
It's that usual kind of just like progressive move overcompensation, unfortunately, and it gets to a point where it becomes very, very obvious, right? And so everybody notices it.
I can't unseal this. There we go.
I don't
How do you make it not cringe?
Like,
yeah. Things being cringe are like high on my priority list. So when these types of conversations, I'm like, well, you
by the way, Stephen, Hans has asked me to tell you that he loves you and he misses you.
I love him and miss him too.
I was going to say, I think this is something that Steven had said earlier that I think became way more true since I started observing these people. But like everything you said about them not actually engaging in actual political action, a lot of this stuff being performative, like just watching the whole recent FD signifier with like kidology nonsense where he's like running around in live stream chats telling her like, don't talk to this guy, don't talk to Vosh, and no, these guys are just going to use you. At the same time, like he's like making whole ass videos about her but doesn't want to talk in public, wants to keep everything, like everything about them is so slimy and just unappealing on an individual level. Just, the way that they act, I just find incredibly cringe. And then you contrast that with people like Nick Fuentes or a lot of right-leaning figure who have, like, irrespective of how terrible they are, like, you can't respect the fact that they create their own political movements, are really invested, put their money where their mouth is, create their own platforms, are super progressive in that.
I don't have to respect that Nick Fuentes is like a fucking super racist that creates his own platform. He's still a scum piece of shit. But I understand what he's saying. They're willing to engage. But I think that's because they have to. Like, you can, when you're in the progressive sphere, you can be super duper lazy because, you know, people, you're pretty much, whatever you're saying is fuck, poop. It's kind of baseline more than anything else. You know, it's kind of just like the status quo. You don't have to really explain yourself as much, or you don't have to like outreach as much because there's already so many people talking like that or saying things that you're saying. But when you're like, you know, when you're a fucking anti-Semite where you don't have like, you know, popular opinion on your side, it's a little bit different. Oh, fuck you. Damn.
Regards, like I don't know, to me there's something admirable about like the fact that their calls to action
but like then again, like Nick Fuentes, like the one thing you have to say, like Nick Fuentes is a disingenuous piece of shit. Like he pretends not to be racist when he like is super racist. I don't respect like lying. Like he'll sit here and like literally think that black people are less than people, but then like he'll talk to a bunch of black people and he'll like pretend that he treats them equally, but he doesn't. You know, I don't have to respect that. I can acknowledge the business strategy, be like, yeah, I respect that. I don't think that that's the correct terminology. You shouldn't give respect to like fucking scum piece of shit for being like a disingenuous piece of fucking dog shit garbage.
Seem real, and that they also follow along with their own financial investment. So for me, watching
really
the way the left discourse happens online, the way a lot of the left creators operate, I don't know, I just think, be it the language they use or inability to just say things like that's why I thought Destiny's take today was refreshing. I don't hear too many left streamers talk about taboo subject and be like, which is like, it's okay to say that, but it just feels like for the left they can never do that. They always have to be like, well, I'm not racist and I like trans people and I'm very racist.
To be making money off of building your brand by
being
so borderline evil? Question mark?
Got him.
Oh, whether or not you make money is by being borderline evil. I don't like whatever. Yeah, I don't know if that's entirely
I just don't know if I would call that progressive.
Wait, who are we referring to right now?
Abba was calling Fuentes progressive.
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
I was saying his business strategy is one that is progressive, and that it progresses. But I probably use the word incorrectly, so that's my apology.
Okay.
As in, it actually
like progress is
sort of
transformative.
Like it's effective, I think is what he's just trying to say. So
yes, exactly. Like it moves forward. Like he doesn't just say something; he actually creates his political movement, follows through with them, gathers the people. So that's what I meant.
Well, it seems to me, I saw somebody tweet this out yesterday, which I thought was really well stated. Well,
there's part of the reason. There's probably just like an oversaturation of like more progressive leaning people too, because it's like the status quo of what to say. Plus, Destiny's just dunking on all the conservatives, guys, and he's ruining the space for the conservatives. He dunks on the progressives too, but you know.
Basically, it seems like unfortunately the more progressive content creators seem to take advantage of people's willingness and desire to want to see change, but cater to them in a way that is sort of very just emotional and purely means to prop themselves up as a content creator, make them money, you know, get people to praise them, etc. So they're kind of taking advantage of people who want to see change, not really providing them any change, but making them feel good about the things that they hear and what they, and the talking points that they hear, but never actually turning that into any form of action.
I mean, it's probably the same for both sides. It's just that there's more room for people on like the left, so there's probably a lot more like just fucking waste of space content creators that are just saying what everybody else is saying, you know. And you don't have to really defend your points as much as a progressive. Like I said, it's like the status quo. You know, that's probably why some of the conservatives that rise to the top, they tend to be a little bit more fleshed out in their beliefs.
Action or any kind of actual movement. It's just like an online thing that is meant to sort of continuously feed that content creator. And
could it just be that people's attention are not at the people that are doing that change because it's not as interesting and drama-filled?
That's probably like one of the elements of it, but overall, you can see the difference between a content creator that actually wants to get something done and a content creator that sort of wants to convince their people that they are the right person.
I mean, the majority of content creators are all narcissists at the end of the day. Are they really doing anything but furthering their own interests?
Sure,
I would say Nick Fuentes absolutely has furthered his interests.
But it's still, yeah. Exactly.
Or that can even be part of the narcissism. That can feed into the narcissism, the impact that you're having in the world or something like that.
Well, I think also, I don't know, when it comes to progressives, I think that like people like to do this idea where it's like I'm all like, they try to be all the altruistic content creator that's like not really creating content because they want to. They're just doing it because it's so fucking necessary, guys. What I'm saying to you guys is absolutely necessary. We need to hear this. I'm not a content creator because it makes me money. I'm a content creator because it's the right thing to do. And you don't hear that from conservatives because they're not fucking lying about that. Bro, listen, it's cool when we sometimes have conversations about stuff that I care about. Like, the big thing I've been pushing a lot now is like conversations about like people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That's like, so occasionally we'll have that conversation, but most of my content is just fucking, we're just having fun. You know what I'm saying, dude? And you know what? There's the financial incentive absolutely exists. If I wasn't making money doing this, I would not be doing this. I'd be working a real fucking job, because you want to know what my priority is? My priority is my family, and I want to make some money, baby. Now, I'm not lying for money, right? We all know that. You might disagree with the take of mine, but like, people will try to frame it. It feels like it's more progressives. They'll try to frame it as like, oh no, I'm doing this because I need to help. I need to do this. It's like, no, you're doing it for money. You could still also think that what you're doing is cool and helping people, but you're mostly doing it for money, you know?
Feeding your own interest is not necessarily a bad thing. If it also encapsulates a larger movement, you could also do both at the same time.
Yeah,
I think probably for Nick, I don't think he just wants to be a supreme ruler of the world. I think he actually believes in some of the ideas that he has, and irrespective of whether or not you disagree with them, he's garnered an audience that follows him, that supports him financially, that shows up to a lot of events, shows up in person, does things that are tangible. And so whether it serves his self-interest or not is really irrelevant to me. I just think what I like.
In Germany, you did that as well.
Well, like,
yeah, he got more done than Bernie Sanders. So
okay. I'll also say this. I think when I look at people's political actions and then it not being like anything really tangible, I think the audience is also partially a reflection of that. Because I think audiences don't actually care that deeply how much real change happens. I think the feel-good stuff is enough for a lot of them, so they just go.
Yeah,
that's true. That's fair.
And like, one of the things that frustrates me about a lot of the online progressive content creation and such is that a lot of it hinges on sort of like this utopian view of the world, that everything needs to get to this utopia and all the problems will be solved. But it's like this massive amount of leap that you have to do to get to the utopia, and nobody's really building the blocks to get to that point. So they're kind of like, oh, well, all of our problems stem from capitalism, so we need this, get rid of capitalism. Well, that doesn't solve the problems now, or even in the near term, or even really in the long term.
That kind of makes sense. And then that maybe, okay, I think what they're going is with this is that like, oh, they'll talk about it. Like Hassan is like, oh, well, I kind of have to die in this game, or I have to live within the system the exact like way everybody else does, because that's just the system until we can completely change it. I don't have that better behavior. Whereas it would probably be better if he did something like invest into a small business that paid its workers based on the amount of wages that came in. Like he actually opened up his own co-op or something. If he really wanted to be the change, he wanted to see the change. If he really wanted to see the change, he would be the change, right? That's the idea. Dude, I got to like the fucking 4th level yesterday, and for some reason I can't even get past like the fucking 2nd. This is crazy. Just restarted this account too.
Because in order to dismantle capitalism, you've got so much roadwork to do to get to the point where you can sustain the population. So it's very
I think that's cope.
Based.
I think that's partially cope. And the reason why I say it's partially cope is I think rather than doing something that's tangible, people focus on the macro because it makes themselves feel better. But they actually have the ability on a micro scale to affect a lot of local positive change.
True.
They just choose not to do it because it's, maybe it's more enjoyable to feel like you're talking about larger scale problems, but I also think it's irresponsible. And if you really care, you would start on something small. So I think to some degree people don't care.
Sure.
Not as much as they like to believe.
People come to this shit like a religion. I took a fucking sociology course. It's just literally sociology like 1, like intro to sociology a couple years ago.
Turn your game down, bro.
It's as if I had downloaded all this bread tube to my brain. Like everything they talk about, all their talking points, all their vocabulary, it was all just from like an intro to sociology course. It like really opened my eyes that all these people had all just taken like 1 or 2 sociology courses and are now just sort of uncritically parroting every single talking point, all the shit about abolishing capitalism, all the shit about how we're like living under oppression and systems of oppression under, you know, the government and capitalism and all that shit. Marx had all the right ideas. Capitalism's inherently bad because we're all being exploited and all that stuff. All that shit just came out of like a sociology 1 course.
Nice, I want this.
None of these people are, you know, like you said, yeah, I don't know, I agree. None of these people are they really care about any of this progress in their local watering holes or anything like that because they're getting. It's like have you ever?
It's the conversation that we had with Darius earlier here today.
So luckily for me, like I don't have to really worry about my local watering hole because like I live in a very well-off white area, so we're all good. So if anything, if I advocate for my community, I'm actually just hurting poor black communities. So if you think about it, me not doing anything is actually the morally virtuous thing to do. So how do you like that, Cope? I'm so funny. Hey, listen, I probably could do more. You did so much when I was in the Boy Scouts, so I guess I'm just like a little fucking burnt out. I've done so much community service and shit. I should be a better person, though. I don't know. I should. What are you gonna do?
Where Darius will go and talk about all the changes he wants to make in his life, but he doesn't actually do any of them, but he feels he gets all the good feelings just from talking about it.
Exactly. Have you ever met a Christian who's like, I know I'm a good person because I'm a Christian or something like that, or I'm a Christian, that's how I know I'm a good person.
Thank God we just sit here and talk,
it's
like watch the Lolcow videos.
I subscribe to this set of beliefs, therefore I know that I'm like, you know, I'm morally justified.
But I think even Christians know that they have to take actions in order to be in alignment with that. Be it going to church, being a lot of them actually donating, be a lot of them doing volunteer work at the church. Like a lot of them do really subscribe.
That assumes they're not Christian in name only, and they're actually like reading the Bible or going to church and having a pastor help them or whatever. Because a lot of people will just say they're a Christian.
I'm burnt out from a childhood program. I'm not 38, dude. I'm 32. Okay. All right. Fuck. You're right though. I have no real excuse. But, you know, I also don't tend to lean on, like, advocacy for most of my shit. So most of my content's just, like, fucking silly goosery. But, hey, listen, bro. We're all coping, dude. All right? Listen, I give the homeless man $20 so that he can drown his fucking sorrows in alcohol, okay? I'm a good person, bro. I'm doing enough. I'm a good person, dude. Okay? I'm a good person, dude. Okay? My wife works with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, okay? Her advocacy, okay? We're married now, so we split everything 50-50. Okay, so all the good charity work, like, well, not charity work, but all the good meaningful work that she puts in at her job is 50% on me because we're married. Okay, that's how marriage works. All right, I don't have to do anything else. I'm good. All right, I'm good.
God, and get that psychological burden lifted from them, but then never actually go forward with doing.
You like my fucking logic, dude?
Their religious views.
I didn't.
I would even say religious people probably are responsible for more like good things, charity and shit like that, or religion as a whole. As a
it's been.
I would argue that religious people, be it missionary, like whether you agree with it or not, I think they're much more likely to take actions in line with their values than I think like non-religious people would.
Yeah, I think so too. Part of that's probably because they just feel more strongly about their religion, but I think part of it too is that I don't know. I feel like people who, I don't know, and this might just be my personal experience thing. I could just be wrong, but I feel like most like people who I know who are conservative tend to be like better off money wise. Most people that I know are progressive tend to be like less well off money wise, and like because you know they're progressive because they're fucking poor and they're coping. Sorry. You know, it's one of those things like, hey, I'm a progressive because I would like to make, you know, I want the system to change because I feel negatively impacted by it. You know what I mean? But I could be wrong about that.
Because I think their faith really matters to them. And maybe it's fear, maybe it's a bunch of different other things. But at the end of the day, they do take tangible actions. I would say one thing I have noticed about liberals, and I think this kind of plays into the meme that Sneako made about all them looking the same, is that I don't think they actually believe in self-determination or actions that they can actually take in order to make tangible scales on a minor scale, which can then go on to larger. And I think that also reflects, funny enough, in their appearance. I think that's why you see a lot of libs with like blue hair, no shade to destiny, or like different like color hair, or like crazy looking piercings or tattoos or really fucked up hair. Part of it is like, okay, there's more freedom to be yourself in the liberal like political ideology, but I think a lot of part of it is also like, what's the easiest thing I can change about myself without actually having to enact any real fucking change, right? I dye my hair.
Maybe.
I think this might be explained for the same reason that more charity.
Maybe. I guess I don't know. I really have to sit on that one. You know, I just think generally speaking, like you can kind of tell when somebody's a little more conservative, a little more progressive. A lot of people mistake me for like a conservative, racist white guy, which I'm not conservative, so I don't know why they do that. But like, especially when I'm wearing my fucking what is it called, my moss hide hat, you know, because there's a look to it, you know. But I don't know if it's as deep as like they're just doing that so that they can seem like they're making change. I think more than anything else, it's just I think it's more just about trying to look unique, I would say. That's it. I think that's really more what it comes down to. It's like easy way to like look a little bit unique as like an identifier. But maybe but I just don't think it's this whole big thing where it's like, oh, they don't want to enact real change so that they just change the color of their hair. I don't think that's what it is. Most people are just like, it's more of a defiance to like, oh, well, this is what society says I should be, so I want to be unique, so I'm going to do this, even though everybody's doing the same thing. So, how unique is it really at that point?
The work that's done through religion is just a cultural thing. I think it's more cultural to put boots on grounds and like put bread in people's mouths and shit like that. Whereas
put cum in people's mouths.
The progressive stuff it's all just a cultural aesthetic, and it's not part of the culture to contribute to any local public works or anything like that, because it's all about defeatism and just recognizing, oh, we're fucked, man, we're totally living under the Star Wars.
That's
Empire
fair. Yeah, I get that.
Or that it's a waste to put anything into that system, and so you need to replace the system before you can really do that.
Yeah, but
and so
maybe they have why do they have that interaction with the political system, but like maybe conservatives don't nearly seem to do the same?
Well, that makes sense. Like conservatives are more community based, so maybe that's why they'll do more like local change. And progressives are like, we can only do it if we completely break down the system. And so that's what ends up fucking them, because like you can't completely break the system down. You need to make like slow functional change.
To what degree?
Fuck it, I'll just use
like
this.
I would argue that I think conservatives.
I think we're getting to the point where conservatives are starting to be conspiratorial. For a while, we had progressives that were like, oh man, the system Debbie Wasserman and Schultz are all trying to circumvent and undermine the progressive system or progressive values. That's why there's sabotaging, burning, this, that, or the other. But now we've got conservatives that think that, the deep state from the swamp or circumventing, undermining their shit.
Okay, I'm actually curious. Do you guys feel like conservatives are better at mobilizing their bases for voting purposes? Because I've always understood it as conservatives are generally less of the population. However, they're very effective politically speaking because of actions. Am I incorrect?
No, in the United States.
Well, I feel like it's because more conservatives are older, and old people have a little bit more time to go out and do their shit, and young people are annoying, and they just don't give a fuck, and they don't think that their word or actions will change. I think it's like almost a maturity thing. Because like even though I'm progressive, as I get older, I'm just going to be considered more conservative because I'm not really going to change too much. So
conservatives are very effective right now because the system favors them. That's what is like barely keeping them hanging on right now.
But didn't they work to make that system favor them?
Nope.
Was that
that's
not
part of
effort?
that's intrinsically just like giving land the ability to have like a say in voting. That's just a thing that's baked in hardcore to the American system.
Okay,
and
so
the
like
fact is that right now,
and stuff like that?
Everybody gerrymanders. There's no easy way to escape like gerrymandering. But the system right now is just set up to favor land over people, and conservatives tend to be more spread out. That's just luck on their part. They didn't even earn that advantage. Like they didn't even like rig the system. That's just like.
So there was a book that I read in the early 2000s by Eric Alterman called Why We're Liberals. And one of the things that I thought was really fascinating about that book was he goes into a section about, because he talks a lot about like liberals and being progressive and all the innate infighting that comes with progressive views, and talked about how conservatives are really good at consolidating and coming together. But one of the things he talked about is one of the major consolidating points for conservatives is that religion is still predominantly conservative, or conservatives are still predominantly religious, and there are a lot of churches
that makes sense too, because it gives people something to identify with and like operate with. That's like very cult. Like it gives you something to rally behind. Like I'm religious, I identify with other religious people. But like when it comes to other people, that's why there's so much progressive infighting. Don't take a shot every time I clear my throat, okay, dude? I have a lot of cum in there. I'm old, dude. Stop making fun of me, dude.
Organized around that, and that churches put in a lot of effort to inform their people about important elections coming up, important issues to vote on or vote against.
Oh, maybe that's interesting.
And we'll do things like do drives to raise funds and help people out and bring them together, and then get buses organized to get people to polling stations and such. And so they have a very strong unifying point to them that just doesn't really exist as much on the progressive or liberal side.
But it doesn't come from bad reasons, though, right? So like. Donald Trump, for example, wouldn't disavow the KKK, but we all just pulled Jeremy Corbyn apart because he didn't react quickly enough to anti-Semitism within his party. So, I mean, yeah, we do have the infighting, but it doesn't necessarily come from a bad place. But obviously, it does benefit conservatives.
Corbyn's a fucking loser. That was his problem, okay? Not the anti-Semitism thing.
Okay. He was incredibly...
The fuck was that?
Yeah, for a little bit, but the anti-Semitism should have been...
Point. Okay.
I'm pretty sure anti-Semitism should have been following... Maybe you keep saying it in a retarded voice louder and louder. Somebody will agree with you.
I'm not saying.
I'm pretty sure anti-Semitism should have been following Corbyn around for like a fucking decade, hasn't it? Like anti-Semitism has been things that people have accused Corbyn and other people in leftist parties and Labour Party in the UK for a long time. I don't think it was like a new thing that was the one thing that shut him down.
No, that was a really big part of it, and because he showed weakness in not being quick enough to deal with the issue, that was his downfall.
I think the issue is that Corbyn's a fucking loser. Everybody saw him as a fucking loser, and people were just like, you know what? The anti-Semitic shit is coming up again, and fuck him.
This was just an example, okay? Which was a good example in the context of this conversation, right?
I just looked up the book. It was 2008. So, but I recommend you guys read it. Maybe a little dated now, but why we're
I just can't stop fucking clearing my throat.
Yeah, but Destiny, I'm surprised at your take on this. One of the things you talked about in the past is like the ability for conservatives to like value community, value family, value like camaraderie and all of those type of things. And that's like the true advantage of conservatives.
That can be an advantage, but the only reason conservatives are able to maintain the power they have in the United States right now is because of the structure of our government favoring land over people. That's the only reason. Without that, they would have almost no voice right now. Conservatism is getting less and less popular. It seems to be the case, right? Hillary Clinton won by what, 3 or 4 million votes? Biden won by what, 11 million votes? Like the conservatives are hanging on by the skin of their teeth because the Senate favors land over.
Yeah, but Hillary was terrible. She's a woman.
Over votes. That's like the one thing they have. And then McConnell the turtle is there trying to block every possible thing that can come out of the Senate. Just because of the land thing, not because of the people.
I like turtles.
I mean, the conservative popular tallies, I wouldn't say are hanging on by a thread. It's still pretty substantial. It's
really. What was the last?
50% of the country still in there.
What was Kerry versus Bush? Like, what was the last Republican that won popular vote? I'm curious.
They don't win, but it's still substantial.
Yeah, it's substantial, but they're losing by bigger margins. I'm just saying that, like, you can say it's substantial. I'm not saying there are no Republicans. I'm just saying that, like, systemically, the reason why they're able to hold on to the power they do is because right now the system is hardcore favoring land over people. That's the only reason why they've held on as well as they could, right?
That's interesting.
Like, Trump can have a dominating presence in the Senate and the presidency despite losing by what? 4 million votes?
Maybe for the presidency, but Congress is still going to be...
Yeah.
No, that's not true. The Senate, right? Again, also...
Oh, okay. I guess he's talking about... Okay, now I'm getting it. Sorry. Like, okay. I guess he's referring to, like, just the way that we vote. It's more based off of... Like, what is it called? Not the popular vote. The other one. The unpopular vote. Where it takes into account, like, the votes based on, like, your country or excuse me, your state. Holy fuck. I'm sounding so uneducated. It's been a while since I've talked about this, so it's... I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. What is it called? Like the Electoral College, basically. Okay, I get it. Let me just move on because I'm sounding like an idiot.
More to land than to people. The only reason why I have both halves of the Senate.
I have this call.
Sure. Wait, you do or don't understand?
I understand because if it were strictly by population, then cities would be electing every representative or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
Lane blue. I get it.
Yeah, I think that gets complicated though, right? Like, should the most populous cities completely dominate?
No,
like,
I never said that. Never made the claim otherwise. I think it's fine the way the Senate is balanced. I'm just saying it's important to notice that. Yeah.
I know you're not making that claim. I'm just trying to make sure we agree on that. So, like, there's inefficiencies in the current process for sure, but I don't know how we rectify those. So, like, I guess it seemed like
you create a third party. I feel like there's a lot of people. I don't know. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of policies that Republicans run on, for the most part, that I see. Maybe if we had a third party that just gave the Democrats a little more of a run for their money, you probably see more conservatives go into that direction. But it's literally just one versus the other. So a lot of people are just like, maybe they're just anti-Democrat. Obviously, they're single issue voters and shit. But what does the Electoral College mean? Okay, let me give you a little brief rundown. Right, so the popular vote is based on the number of people who vote. And then the Electoral College, every state gets a designated number of votes. And so what happens is when you vote, you're voting for, depending on how that state divvies up the electoral vote, how they're going to divvy it up. Most states, I think, just say, like, whoever wins the popular vote in our state will give all of our electoral votes to the candidate. Some of them, I think, do like a split. And so what happens is that places like New York disproportionately get less voting power than smaller areas like Idaho, I guess you'd say. Even though we get more votes overall, we get less proportion to our population because there's a lot of densely populated people in the area. Does that make sense? And so the idea is that there's a lot of conservatives in like smaller states that have less people in them, because usually there's more people in the more financially robust states that are progressive, like New York, because they have very robust welfare systems that support people having kids and whatnot, and it makes it easier for them to live. And so the idea is that these conservatives, proportionately to their existence, get more voting power per vote because they live in smaller states, but they still get that vote still carries more weight individually. Does that make sense? So that's how we vote. We vote based on electoral. So like you're going to vote, and then your state will take their votes and they'll vote either Democrat or Republican based on your vote. So you're voting for a vote. You're voting for a vote for a president. You're not voting for president. You're voting for somebody to vote for the president. Does that make any sense?
signing some level of intent, and maybe you weren't, and I misread
No,
that.
I'll
but,
say very clearly, I'm okay with the system set up as is. I don't think it's necessarily a problem. I think that land should be able to vote. I think states do have interests, but it's important to realize that when Republicans are running around screaming like, he won the election, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, he kind of did, but not with the people, with the states, right? Donald Trump was a deeply unpopular president. He lost by, I think, the largest margin of any president that's won an election in the history of the United States, and conservatives are losing popularity in a lot of areas, but structural advantages keep them where they are. I think that's important to recognize. Not saying we should change the structure, but it's important to recognize those things as fact.
Got you. And I don't think they would win by as much as they do if the left wasn't so, like, divided.
Stinky.
Like the whole progressive liberal versus leftist thing. And I was actually just having a conversation with somebody about this, but I think that's ultimately what hurts us on the left more so than anything
What the hell's
else.
happening? I'm stuck. Oh.
Bro, it hurts a little bit, but it's hard to say because electorally we don't fight that as much as conservatives have fought it electorally. I don't know what the answer is there. What the fuck is this?
Bro, no, don't kill me.
I mean,
I'm a good man, Savannah.
You know more about the electoral system and stuff. I'm curious when you say that conservatism is extremely unpopular or something, like I feel like the popular vote
I gotta
was in
play
what,
better.
like 5% or something still, right?
5% is a lot of people when you were talking about the entirety of the American public, right?
Yeah, sure.
But that's to say that something's unpopular if if it's almost 50-50.
I didn't say it was unpopular. I didn't say there's no conservatives. I'm just saying that like conservatives will often.
Extremely unpopular.
Whatever. If I said extremely unpopular, then I'm wrong and fucking retarded. I was a fucking retard.
Stop saying it!
What I'm saying is that they're not winning by massive margins, even when they
say it
control all
this
three
time.
parts of the fucking executive, legislative, whatever. Even when they're controlling everything, it's not like they're winning by popular mandate. They're winning because they have structural advantages.
Okay,
That's
I'm
what
asking
I'm
because I want to understand this context where we can call something that is almost half the country and is like 70 to 80 million people, and we can call it like extremely unpopular.
Sorry, if I said extremely popular, I'm a fucking retard. And the next time you see me, you should beat the fucking shit out of me. Okay? I was wrong if I said that. Okay?
Will do.
Thank you.
I just got back. Why are we beating the shit out of you?
Because he deserves it.
Your mom wants it to happen. She loves it. She loves watching it.
My mom just passed away a few days ago.
Jesus
I'm sorry,
Christ,
but
that's terrible.
She
thanks.
definitely did not.
You really brought down the energy of the room now, okay?
I don't care. Much like the way Destiny denied House Phone's mom, your mom is definitely still alive.
I did not deny
She is,
Housephone's
yeah.
mom, okay? Jesus.
Actually, I haven't heard from her today.
House phone. What's that? Oh, that's the
I
rapper.
did.
Fucked up would it be if she died?
No jumper guy.
And then when I come on to talk about it tomorrow, nobody would believe me.
These other people are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard something that I liked, and that's what caused me to jump in here.
What was
I
it?
heard
Because you were called a
Abba
person of color?
Damn.
No, it's when you said that people should clean their room. I was like, yo, that's a Jordan Peterson take. This is great. This is awesome. Let me jump in.
Oh my fucking god.
What's wrong with? Yeah, well, people should clean their room. Is he going to disagree with that? Like, one of the best things you could do for somebody with depression is clean your fucking room. It's hard because you're depressed, and but it's still the right thing to do. It's like those small steps of taking care of like your local atmosphere. If your room is clean, if you're sleeping in nice, clean sheets, and your room's not a mess, you're going to feel better as a person. And since your room is probably where you're spending most of your time, especially since you're a fucking sad boy or sad girl, or sad them, whatever, you're gonna feel better being like cleaning up your room, and you'll put effort into it, which starts working on your life. It's a really small but like first step to take to bettering yourself and your person. Oh, that kind of is cringe. Okay. Sorry, the game, not what I'm saying. I'm obviously always right about everything.
Great.
Did I
just
say that?
Because it's a Jordan
Or did I
Peterson
say something? Oh, you mean I said something similar?
You said that people should focus on micro issues and fixing their communities rather than macros and just trying to like evoke morality upon themselves.
I just
the
don't
reason why
think.
is because it's difficult to tackle macro issues. It's a lot easier. You can actually affect change more immediately by addressing the micro issues, which in the end, if you address enough of those micro issues, will have an overall macro change effect.
Sure, I guess.
Music to my ears, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Got
so
literal music going on as well. How's your party, Abba?
It's really easy for people to, like as Abba was saying earlier, for people to sort of make themselves feel good about talking about these big changes, but unfortunately
change.
it's just a guaranteed way to paralyze yourself on actually affecting any change at all.
I think the point I was trying to make is I just felt like the way I feel a lot of leftist streamers tackle their political issues seems to be the same way they lead their personal lives. Meaning that I think they do very little self-actualization and don't put any effort for it. And I think it shows also in their political actions.
too good at
I
the
don't know who
same
said that quote, but like the way you do some things is the way you do everything. Like I don't. Sometimes I feel like that
makes
rings
sense.
true.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know why, but that Sneako fucking meme where he had like all of the fucking lefty streamers lined up and they had like the same
How
similar
many times are you going to say this? It's like the third time.
haircut and a bunch of weird looking things that most people in the general population would find fucking weird. I don't know. It just that starts to ring true every time I see it because it feels as though their actions are similar to that.
I would say
Hold on.
I'm a little upset that I'm not on that list, by the way. Okay. I mean, he's called me Papa John so many times. I just think I don't look like the rest of them. That's why. I'm just a fat conservative looking person. So fuck. Also, when he went on TikTok to try to like clip our conversation and make me look dumb, people like, do you even know who this guy is? They're talking about me because I'm fucking super TikTok based, but I can't be on TikTok because they keep banning me, even though I pull like 1 million views at like fucking every like third video I put up there. They fucking will take me down. All right, my videos will go up, then they'll get taken down for not copyright, for fucking meaniness, but then I'll appeal it and they'll go right back up, but it doesn't matter. I've just gotten 2 fucking 1 week bans and I'm back up tomorrow. It's just a waste. It's so annoying.
You gotta keep in mind that conservatives are the same shit. How many fucking MAGA dudes with those weird fucking sunglasses come out of their trucks to talk about how much they were offended by the halftime show or the last thing?
Bro, you really can tell who's like who's a progressive and who's like a conservative just by looking at them. It's true. You know, I look like I'd be like a fucking conservative, and Sneako probably looks like he'd be a progressive, although maybe not so much now. He actually looks like he'd be apolitical, which I think he mostly is. He just kind of pretends to understand politics, but because he doesn't. Like, I think that we've already established that he has no real interest in politics, so he just pretends to do it. You know, that's kind of like what he looks like. He looks like somebody that doesn't really give a fuck about politics, and I don't think he really does. Oh, fuck, this dodge thing is awesome. Holy fuck. The deflect.
Thing that Biden said or whatever, like, everybody's got their stereotypes.
You're just talking about like selling an aesthetic as part of a package of like political.
He's just getting his new programming from Sneako. That's what he's getting.
Well, I would say
I'm unplugging from the Matrix, and I think what I've realized
is also apparently there's a biological aspect to like the way that you vote is interesting. Just die already, you motherfucker. Oh shit.
It just seems like the fucking libs. Okay, I'm sorry. But it just appears as though when it comes to actual political action, the right seems to be better at engaging in it.
Okay, is Sneako good at political action? Are the Andrew Tate people good at political action? No, they're they're picking up an aesthetic, and that's part of their cultural identity.
I mean, it's hard to say because Andrew Tate, even though he's a sex trafficking piece of shit, they were very effective. So.
Being sold to them.
I don't know, man. The Tate's,
I disagree.
It's incredibly effective. You've got a guy that talks about objectifying women his whole life, and look how many women he objectified at one time. 75 working for him, all thinking that they're dating him. I think it was pretty impressive.
Also, what are we defining as political effectiveness? Because I wouldn't call, like, if I were going to talk about political effectiveness, I would talk, like, for right wing, I'd consider Nick Fuentes to be someone we talk about when it comes to political effectiveness. So
I think the red pill is similar, Jason, because I think even though their issues may be gender related or dating related to some degree, but when they talk about the Matrix or whatever, like there is a certain element of politics involved that it does feel very real when it comes
to it to politics. How does it relate?
Yeah,
I think it's adjacent. Yeah, I think it's very much adjacent.
Explain
How do you define a politic? I guess the activities associated with the governments of a country. Oh, I guess they're not that. I guess they don't have any real impact on politics, I suppose. Yes.
Because I think when you consider the way that their ideology moves forward, it basically leans into everything that's potentially conservative. So whether they want
Can I expand on the biological aspect of how you vote? I can't because I'm not super educated on it. I remember Andrew Tate, Andrew Yang was talking about it, that there's like a study that suggests the way we vote is like somewhat biological in some capacity. I would recommend you look into it. Maybe I'm wrong about that. It was just like an interesting factoid, but I haven't like super invested my time into it. But I think it goes hand in hand with like people who look like they're progressive versus conservative. There's probably people who have predispositions to voting more progressive or more conservative based on their different shit. So.
Sexual freedom for people, whether they feel like, to some degree women should be subservient, whether they feel as though you should be financially independent in the system and they're for low taxation. Like a lot of their views track on very, very, very strongly with how the right lives. And that's why they do a lot of the religious grifts and stuff like that. So the idea that the red pill is not political is, I think, super bizarre. Everything about it is
it's kind of unfair that the average conservative wants less rights for women. Okay.
Yeah. Sucks to suck, women.
It can be political, but how does that translate to like a real world?
What he's saying is that people on the left don't sell you a lifestyle. People on the right do, right? If I say like, what does it mean?
The only difference is that Andrew Tate hasn't like contributed to the politic of that. He just like that's just how he feels. So to say that they're effective politically, I guess would be, I don't know if that's true or not, but whatever.
Conservative. I've got like the red pill gives you this whole guide of living. If I say what does it mean to live as a progressive, I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do. Like find a black person to kiss his boots in public. Like there's no guide. Yeah. It's just like perpetual like shame and agony.
And even beyond that, not only is their framework pretty clear and concise to most folks.
Give me a fucking thick. Well, I can't say it. Emo. Wait, black goth girl. I'll lick her boot. No, I can't. I'm married. I'm a fucking devout man now, dude. I have to get rid of that dog in me, okay? I gotta be a better man for my children. Imagine they start fucking watching my content like, Dad, what are you doing, dude? We watched this video that was 10 years old. You're disgusting. I'll say, well, digital footprint, kids. Be better. I don't know what to tell you. I got that dog in me, baby. I got that fucking dog in me. Doom. Let's see.
Folks, they're incredibly effective at getting their messages out to a lot of people and making a lot of young, impressionable minds. And I would also say that they tend to live by a lot of the values that they themselves espouse. Not always, not all the time, but it does seem like they are far more effective at doing so. So there just appears to be some congruence in between what they're espousing in terms of politics and the way that they live.
But isn't the whole issue with like Andrew Tate type people is that they can't give advice to the average man because they aren't the average man. So what they come out with is a bunch of shit that can't be applicable to like most men.
Yes, but it does tell them to take accountability for their lives, to take actions to be able to actually fix things. They give them tangible stuff that they can actually do. Like the right and the red pill's ideology in regards to how they say like young folks should act is actually far more appealing because it gives agency to the individual and demands that they take actions to make themselves feel better.
I disagree with that, but I also agree with that. So I don't think it's far more appealing. I think it's very appealing to tell people that that you are only failing in your life because it's everybody else's responsibility. And I think that's why a lot of young kids tend to gravitate towards that like leftist ideology, because it tells them that like their failures are exclusively a problem of like a product of like the systemic issues. And some of them are, but they say it's exclusively that. And that's what really popular people who identify with or being a victim resonates with them, right? Whereas when it comes to success, having personal accountability and saying like, oh, it's always, if you have the mentality of like, okay, there's always something I could do to better myself, it's probably true. Even if the system's holding you back in some capacity, and you will be more successful if you take that onto yourself, right? At the end of the day, like we obviously have to advocate for change. But if you're like, oh, well, I'm black or I'm this or I'm that, and I acknowledge that might be harder for me in life, but there's always something that I can do as long as I don't victimize myself, you're going to be more successful. If you work hard, you will generally be more successful. That success doesn't mean that you're going to be a fucking millionaire, obviously. But you will generally be more successful if you work harder. It's just kind of the truth. And then if you victimize yourself too much, you're going to be a fucking failure. It's one of the things that like my mother really instilled in me. Like, you know, I have ADHD. I never wanted it to be a reason why I didn't succeed at something, because I felt it was belittling to me. So there's things now that I'm older that I examine, and I'm married to a fucking behavioral specialist. So like we have robust conversations about the way that I interact with the world and stuff, which can sometimes be frustrating. She never you always take your work home when you do that kind of work, and God bless her because she's an incredible woman. But but I never looked at it when I was young, and so like I would do something. Maybe I did something weird. Maybe I'd overly fixate on somebody in public, but I didn't go like, "Oh, it's my ADHD." Like I'd be like, "Okay, I gotta just not do that anymore." And you just try to be better. You just try to better yourself, even if it's harder. It's just a better way to interact with your shit. Is to try to have as much control over your shit as you can.
And I think that kind of ideology leads to a better political involvement than the other one, which is the left, which is just like society.
Abby is preaching.
I mean, there is some self-help stuff in that. I don't think anyone's denying that.
I think there's
it's not like a package of self-help though. Like the right definitely has a more consolidated package of self-help and lifestyle living and such that the left just doesn't have. So I would agree with that. I think the way Destiny presented that actually was a really good way of kind of packaging that up nicely. But I still like when I think political.
Oh shit!
Like,
my balls.
even though you can be changing people's opinions and like causing a little bit of a social movement, when I think of political effectiveness, the reason why I was thinking of like Nick Fuentes is because I think of somebody who actually gets senators to sign on to their particular like brand of politics and such, and to be part of AFPAC, be funded by AFPAC, and such, where you're actually bringing the politics into the real world politics stage to affect things like what is being drafted for legislation and who's voting on what legislation.
To be fair, I don't think Fuentes has gotten that part where he's like influencing the legislation, but
I didn't hear that.
No, not quite. But we've had a couple of AFPACers draft legislation, so.
Yeah, like that.
So
I mean, when you were saying like the left doesn't have a pre-packaged thing for self-help, but isn't that because people that are left progressive leaning, they're not scared to go to therapy and have already been doing a lot of these things as it is?
Bro, people on the left.
Nah, I don't think so, because then people will just be like, "Oh, I can't go to therapy. I don't have the money for it. The system's broken." I think that some people, especially young people, gravitate towards it because it gives them an excuse for their failures and teaches them they don't have to like be responsible for themselves. And I feel like some of the problems too is that we set kids up to like, I don't know. There's like an issue with instant gratification. Oh, I'm gonna fucking get smacked. In some capacity, in a few different ways. I don't know. There's a lot of issues, but ultimately, it feels better when like you're just like, there's nothing I can do to change it. Well, for some people, it feels better for them when they like, oh, I can't. My life's out of my control. I guess I'm just fucked. So I guess conservatives do the life out of my control too, but they do it in like a different way, where it's like this was God's plan, so it's okay. I should just keep working hard and trying to be the best, whatever. Oh fuck my balls.
Left are all on SSRIs and depressed and Like, no, what? I don't...
Yup, true.
Yeah,
like,
I would say that they're not getting
they're not
over their shit.
scared
It's-
of going to therapy.
But that's them following the prescription of what you.
You don't have the
They're not
money.
like a lot of
Seeking
right
these
people that
treatments.
are terrified of going to a doctor.
I don't know.
about
It
this
seems
shit.
all chaotic to me. It seems like some of the few unifying calls is like therapy good, or something, whatever. But there's not really an overall lifestyle.
Yeah, therapy in and of itself is useless. Okay, if you just use therapy in a vacuum, that's useless. The self-actualizing part, I would argue, is more important than therapy, and that if therapy is to be effective, it has to work in conjunction with the changeable actions that you actually have to take.
Sure, but that's part of therapy, is engaging in changeable actions. So you're not really providing too much nuance there. You're just saying that therapy only works if you take your therapist's advice. It's like, yeah, that's the point. It's like a therapist job. Well, they'll usually like figure out what like your problem is, because usually, it's easier for them as the outside, and then they'll try to guide you in a way where you realize what your issue is. But like, yeah, that's all therapy. You're supposed to actually do something about with the information that you've been given. And if you don't do that, you obviously are not going to have like an effective therapy session. And then also, one of the problems too with therapy is that you can be this person that just says what you think the therapist wants to hear, and then you're not actually going to get help. Therapy can be really difficult to operate with sometimes, and it could also be super fucking difficult, because if you have like a severe trauma, this is going to be a little bit of a hot take. If you have a severe trauma, you have to unlock that trauma, which is going to be harder for you in the short run than it is like in general. So like in the long run, you can go get a lot of really good releasing in like energy from acknowledging the trauma that you had and then moving forward. But in the shorthand, it could fuck you up, because like you now have to it's now very activated to you. Like I was talking like jokingly about before, it was in a different segment. Like I talked to my wife, and we've been talking about like some stuff to me, and she's like, sometimes I feel like I don't really know you, because we don't really talk about anything that's like necessarily traumatizing to me. But when I do, I laugh about it. Like I talked about how like my house got broken into when I was a kid, and it's kind of fucked me up, and now like all I really do is walk. It's part of the reason why I compulsively check the doors every night. Right, it's like constantly for upwards of like a half an hour, and I laugh about it, because what the fuck else am I supposed to do? But if like I really went to the therapy and like unlocked that thing, that'd probably fuck me up tough shorthand. Overall, it might help me with the whole behavior of constantly compulsively checking and locking the door. But at the end of the day, like that's a really difficult struggle to go through, like especially if I've had more suppressed shit. Because she's like, I think you have more suppressed shit. Maybe I don't fucking want to know it though. I don't feel like unlocking it. Okay, I don't feel like dealing with that shit. I'm pretty comfortable and happy with where I am. So there's a lot of there's a lot going on there. I wish I got Dash Reflect. That'd be fucking awesome. Yeah.
What I think is, and I've been having this discourse for a while, but whenever I say like, one thing that I say about the red pill and all those folks who kind of live that thing is, their messaging is incredibly infectious. And if I'm an individual who's sitting at home and feel miserable in my life, their messaging is probably the one that's most apt towards me, because it encouraged me to get off my ass.
No, that's not what it is. I'm just telling you right now, people don't gravitate towards the red pill because it encourages you to get off your ass. People gravitate towards the red pill because they're men, and the red pill blames women for all their fucking problems. Let's not pretend that this red pill shit, it doesn't create as much of a fucking victim complex as like the leftist shit does. The difference is that like on the red pill area, it's like, oh, all women are the problem and you should better yourself. So it makes you feel good that you can just blame women for all the problems in the world, and then you get to better yourself. But like, let's not like pretend that it's all about being a strong masculine man, when 90, like 100, almost like all the fucking things that go on, it's always like, oh, women are terrible, the modern women is shit, you go to another country, fuck a 13-year-old. That's pretty much what you're getting out of fucking red pill. It just blames women for your problems. It makes you feel better about yourself, and then some people get a positive message out of that, but it doesn't mean all do. What the fuck? Who's this? This is new.
Encourage me to get involved, encourage me to take care of myself, encourage me to...
Bro, after I got off this game last night, I was jerking myself off, dude. I couldn't help it. It's fucking, some of these characters are hot.
Be more financially literate.
I'm not coping about red pill. I'm telling you the truth. The red pill just focus on shitting on women relentlessly and religiously. Don't sunlock me. I'll ban you.
More financially involved. So all this messaging is what men, and generally young men, want to hear in regards to how they can better themselves. Whereas when the left just says, go to therapy, it's like, bitch, how's that going to help me? Like, I'm still broke. You know what I mean? Like,
I was giving that as an example of, like, left people aren't already scared of progressive ideas already, whereas right-leaning people seem more reticent to get involved in that already. Because there's already, like, loads of self-help that doesn't have a political leaning that has existed, like, long before Jordan Peterson came along,
Yeah, but when you're part of a minority class that doesn't have a lot of political power, you got to understand that messaging is going to be more powerful. I don't know what happened and why the left, like, gave up agency. Like, the message used to be, hey, you can have agency in the things that you are directly involved in, but root for systemic change. But then as Jordan Peterson became more popular, people started to demonize agency as a whole. And that's where, like, I don't know why the left gave up this ground, But the fact that they have that, they ceded all of that power to the
what
right.
is demonization of agency?
Like everything is a systemic problem. Nobody can do anything to improve the circumstances. It's all white supremacy, white colonialism, anti-blackness.
The individuals.
And if they hold on, if they don't endorse that kind of rhetoric, then they're very tacit or very reluctant to actually wail against it effectively. And so it almost seems like they're implied agreeing with it because they refuse to actually speak out against it.
I think, well, there's a few things being missed here. I think the left is like very strong with advocacy towards like protesting or something like that. We saw that during like BLM, even violent protesting, and even
that hit me.
Like, you know what? Actually, it's better to detriment these systems or businesses because that'll propel some radical change or something like that. And the red pill, they sell their own fucking misery, woe is me stories too about how the reason all these men are, whatever, you know the whole story. Like, women are liberated, so they don't need the men, so now they can just go fuck around. Now there's all these lonely, sad men or whatever, and that's why this is the cause of your misery. There's a fair mix on both sides, I think, but in general, I think you're right. It may just not be perfectly congruent to compare progressivism, which seeks for like direct political advocacy to realize a set of political ideals versus the red pill, which I think you're right, does offer the individual, like, here are some things that you can and should do to improve your individual personal quality of life. I just don't think that's the goal of progressivism.
But isn't the difference just that we do consider societal systemic oppression and that the right just don't at all? Like, it's not like we blame everything on systemic oppression. It's just that we acknowledge that it is a thing.
There's too much on
that. No, that's the idea, is to just take it into account. But sometimes some people will lean too much into like the victim. Like if you adhere to like leftist or not leftist, more progressive ideology of like, hey, the system is broken, but you have to still have individuality and like to better yourself, then you'll be successful. But if you have to choose between farther left ideology of the system's broken, there's nothing we could do, versus like the farther right ideology of like everything that happens in your life is your control and your fault, you're obviously going to do better if you go more towards right.
On the left.
Right? Really?
There's too much defeatism. Yeah.
I don't know.
Like the problem that I see, or not really problem, but like a thing that I observed that's a key difference between conservative rhetoric and progressive rhetoric, and it goes back to the individual versus the collective, is that with conservatives they actually really keep things simple, really good at messaging, because the answers tend to be very, very simple, right? And oftentimes are on the individual. Here's what you can do to change something now. Like clean your room, get in shape,
shit your pants.
These little things, right? It's very addressable. It's very immediate. And with progressives, oftentimes is focusing on the collective and systemic issues. You want to get an answer to them on like why it is that you're having difficulty in life, why you're not able to, get a partner or whatever, why you can't hold down a job. Their answer is going to be very convoluted, complicated, all these systemic things going on. And here's what Marx said about these systems. And it's just like, there's no direct, simple, like easy, here's what you can do right now to give yourself some progress. So the conservatives are really good with that messaging, and that's something that progressives need to learn as well. And but unfortunately, the direction it's moved in, I don't see that happening.
I don't know if conservatives are good with that so much as there's just a lot of overlap between red pill people and conservatism.
I mean, this is just conservatism overall.
Yeah.
Like doesn't matter if they're red pill or not.
Yeah, they seem great. Like the thing that I took, because people used to always say Gambit is a conservative, and it became a meme because of how I talk about agency. But like the thing that
is he Gambit? I thought he was talking about fucking Marvel. I was like, oh, interesting.
I tell people is, imagine you're a black person and you're on your deathbed,
and the reason is because like I'm assuming his name is Gambit, but black people love comic books and shit, and they love anime, dude. I say it all the time, but like they're normal. It's very weird. Like I say it all the time. You go into Hot Topic, you're either going to see the weirdest fucking white person in the world, or a normal black person. Those are the only two people that walk into Hot Topic, and then confused Hispanic women. I'm just kidding. But yeah, and so I was like, oh, maybe he does really like Gambit. I wouldn't doubt it,
Children are at your deathbed, right? And they're saying, and imagine you're ultra poor, and your kids are saying, hey, Dad, what should we do? Or hey, Mom, what should we do? You would never prescribe to them, go work for the Democratic Party for the rest of your life, and hopefully some systemic change will twinkle down into you, and then you'll have a better life, right? You tell them actionable steps that they can take to make their lives better. That's the part where we lose to the right when we just act as if agency isn't important, because it's motivating, like everything that Albert said, and it's practical. So like we have to understand like agency is super important.
What are these actionable steps that
who's
the
agency
people are saying that are actually any good other than work out? Like, what are
well, if you're talking specifically the red pill.
Well, I mean, telling people to work out is, I think it's a lot. I think especially for young men, telling people to work out is a lot more than people. I think people should give it a little bit more. It's not just, oh, just work out, bro. No, like if you work out, especially if you can work out effectively, it's a really good stress reliever. It invests in energy into your body. It makes you feel healthier. It'll actually make you smarter and have better reaction time. I think so, because you're just treating your body better. It'll usually make you want to eat better, because in my experience, when I work out more, I feel shittier when I eat poorly, if that makes sense. there's a lot of positive changes, and if you really get into working out and you get into like routine building and stuff, it gives you something motivating that you can do, something that you can invest your time, effort, and energy into. So there's a lot there. Oh, I guess I'm getting that. Okay.
And that narrows it down a lot more. But overall, I would say conservatives are better at messaging in simple terms that translate better to people.
Yeah, gym is therapy.
Well,
True.
I agree that they can be quite good at getting the message across. I'm just saying that the messages
like,
kind of suck for the most part.
Especially like a lot of young men. Like a lot of young men can be angry. When I get, because I can be an angry person sometimes, right? So like yesterday, I was just angry for no reason. This is something that happens to me sometimes. It just is what it is. So I was like, yeah, I'm just angry sometimes. But I went to the gym last night with my wife afterwards, and I just felt better. After I got out of the gym, I just felt less angry. You know what I mean? Like it helps you process your anger, because that's one of the things too. People should. It's okay to be angry as like a man. I think that's part of the problem with like toxic masculinity is anytime man angry. It's about don't process that anger negatively. Don't hit people, but like be a fucking grown up about it. It's like go to the gym is a good way to process your anger. It helps you keep your shit together. Something to look forward to. Something to build.
Like red pillars, like Andrew Tate say, depression isn't real, but we're trying to say like this isn't good.
Kelly Jean, let me give you another example that's not just the
well, no, people like Andrew Tate because like he makes them feel like victims. He's just a male victim complex because like, oh, women bad, women are the reason that we have a problem in the world. Like that's it. And then they resonate with that, and then he'll throw in some sprinkles of some like basic information, like you should probably work on your body as well. But it's like, yeah, that's good advice, but overall, the shitting on women is not good. So.
They'll tell people to go to work and be the best fucking person at work, and you'll get a higher salary at some point.
Generally
Whereas
speaking, yeah, sure.
what people on the left will say is, well, go join a union or some shit like that. Like, and I'm not saying that unions can't be powerful.
What? No, unions are good. You should try to get a union job. Just try to get like not a fucking Starbucks union job. Go try to be like a fucking welder in HVAC tech or something. Those are really good jobs to get. I think I understand what you're saying. Try to make a union, but like union jobs are great because a lot of times people in union jobs, especially once you get up there, they don't work super hard. Okay, the guys are like, you got soft hands, brother. I worked 70 hours this week. That's not usually most union jobs. Most union jobs are like, I came in at 8 in the morning and I sat around for 4 hours and I took a nap and then I did some like 2 hours of work and I got paid overtime for it. This is the one that made me jerk off last night. You can't see it though. Let me show you guys. Boom! You guys haven't been seeing it. Woo! You guys got to take a look at that shit, boy. What the fuck? Put this over my head at this point. God damn. All right, or what? Anyway, I'm on a bit of a tangent here. Let's get back to what we're talking about.
They haven't done like great things for our country, but they're gonna tell people to do things that are personally actionable and like go to work.
There's nothing wrong with wearing Starbucks. I'm just saying that's what you get. Shut up. All right.
And more than likely, aren't trying to do the best at their jobs already.
I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the prescription and the message, right?
No, I honestly like the general progressive idea. Like from what you see, at least on TikTok, is like don't work that hard at your job. Because they don't care about you or whatever. It's like they're taking your labor anyway. And it's like, not for nothing, but like try to find some purpose in your job. Try to be the best at your job. It doesn't matter what it is. I used to clean buses for a living. And I found the purpose of my job. I was the best fucking bus washer manager I could be because that was my job. And I found some purpose in it. My purpose was to make the buses cleaner for the fucking people that went on the bus. So they wouldn't get sick. Okay. During COVID, obviously you had to get your shit together too, because we had to disinfect the buses every day. That was very important, for people who had to get to like their dialysis, and they would die without like transportation, shit like that. If you work at McDonald's, be the best, and you're a fucking cashier, be the best cashier you can be. And what does that mean? Like, what you'd be like, well, what does that matter? Well, you know what it matter? It could matter to somebody who just got off of like a long shift and had a bad day, and you just greet them with a smile, and you care enough about or you're the burger flipper, you put the burgers together, and you cared enough to like be attentive enough to not get the order wrong, because that little thing could just make them go. Like, you ever get out of a bad day at work and just like every little thing fucks you up? It's like one of those. Take some, and they always say like, oh, they don't promote the people that do really well. They try to keep them in that position. That can definitely happen. But also, some of those people might just be good at that job and not show any other promise in any other field or any other potential position in some different capacity. And that's why they get kind of pigeonholed in that too. Generally speaking, if you apply yourself to your job, you're going to get valued more and you're going to like potentially move up. And if you leave that job, you can get a great recommendation. They're like, yeah, he was a burger flipper, but like he did it, or she, but they did an excellent job. Like they were the best worker that we had, and we're like, we hate to lose them. Like that's like, you get these things matter. These little things matter. And if you just say well, nothing matters, it doesn't. And I get that you can get into like that pit of like sorrow because sometimes like work just kicks your ass when you're doing the same thing for a long time. But if you apply yourself as much as possible, you have a better chance of taking that and building yourself moving forward.
Just saying it's a useless message. Like,
No.
It's not. Hold on. It's not a useless message. Where I have lefties constantly complaining about systemic issues all day long. Me as an individual who wants to take actionable steps to make my life better, I hear from the right: get a good job, make sure your money's in order because that'll eventually bring you to be more attractive to the other party. Get your home in order. Make sure you get your fitness in step. Make sure you start to find ways to make financial freedom a possibility. And the thing that happens is, as you take these steps, you actually do notice that your life gets remarkably better. And so you get a feedback loop in where their advice, even though it's maybe basic or simple, is actually having a huge influence on your life. When they're saying stuff like be disciplined and make sure you stick to that stuff, that helps people. People need that kind of framework. The same way a lot of people without any hope need religion, a lot of folks who are young men and who are lost need actionable framework that makes them feel like they have a place in the world. Without that, they're just going to feel lost and they're going to be young adults who don't know where they're supposed to go. I
disagree, but I think that the things that you just listed are the most obvious things on the planet.
But like that's the problem is people aren't listening to fucking obvious advice. People do this all the time. Like the people don't go with the you have to build your basics first. I mean, like, that's really what comes up. People don't understand, like, just fundamentals or basics of things. They try to, like, skip 15 steps. It's very important. When you have a school system that's trying to get you to go to college, that's a problem. They're not trying to get you to go into the right career path. School should be saying, hey, what if you became an HVAC tech or this or that or did a trade? They don't usually do that. They're like, you should go to college. Always go to college. And then you think that, like, life is go through school, go college, you're good. But, like, it's different for different people. College isn't bad. I think a liberal arts degree is decent. But if you don't know what you want to do by the time you're done with liberal arts, go get a fucking real job or get a trade so you can make money. Nobody ever said to me, yeah, you know what? You don't know what you want to do? Why don't you go and maybe work on, be an HVAC tech? Oh. Instead, they're like, you'll figure it out in college. No, you probably won't, asshole. You won't. Go and go get a trade job that pays really well. Be a welder. And then you know what? If you decide to change your career at 30, you're going to have a lot of money. So you're going to be able to change your career at 30. That's what you should do more than anything else. That's what you should do. So it sounds simple, but like, for instance, if I told you what I did at the gym, you'd be like, that's not effective. What are you talking about? Because like when I go to the gym, I will usually go like 6 days a week, 5 or 6 days a week with my wife. I'll do 20 minutes of cardio, or I'll do 10 minutes of cardio right now, then 20 minutes of weights, and then 10 minutes of cardio. And for the most part, all I'm doing is like one exercise. So I'll do, and you'd be like, well, that's not enough. And it's like, but for me, the basic is if it's eliciting a response and I'm increasing my numbers per session, it's working. But you're so conditioned to be like, well, you have to do bench and you have to do incline, you have to do this, you have to do that. But there's proportionality to where you're at. And right now I like high frequency, low volume, right? So you would say, well, that's not right, but I'm working on the fundamentals and I'm getting my shit up. Like I know what I'm doing. I've gotten strong multiple times because I keep fucking quitting. I have a bad shoulder, guys. The point that I'm trying to make here is that the basics are very important and people often bypass the basics and they look for this really complicated solution to all their problems. But the reality is that the basics are more important than anything else. Like doing the fundamentals and doing the basics, if you focus on that, you'll probably be more successful than somebody that's looking for like some incredibly complicated answer that's not going to really be too great overall. That's it.
I wouldn't listen to you because you're not somebody I'd want to emulate. Hold on.
So let me make this.
Yes, but hold on. But when I see somebody who's hyper successful and leads a life I'd actually want to live, then I would want to emulate them. And the problem is most lefties do not lead lives that most people want to actually respect or emulate. So that's the problem. Like I'm not trying to be vouch. Like I'm sorry, it's just not. There's never gonna be a day where I look at the white Tacoma's weeping. And I'm thinking like I want to be that dude. But if
there are some people who want to be isn't it Vosh? Is it Vouch or Vosh? Like I'm confused. Is it people just dunking on him? They're calling him Vouch? Okay, you're really starting to piss me off, bitch. I'm gonna fucking shit in your balls. Different people resonate with different things. Like obviously he's very successful. Dude, what is happening in this fight?
Listen to someone like Andrew Tate, even if I find him repulsive, the dude, very successful at what he's done, has the money, whatever. For a young man, he sees those markers of success, and that's much more something he would want to emulate over someone like us, and that's why they have different.
Bad. Just like seeing like that kind of wealth as a marker of success, and therefore I want to emulate that. Like, what kind of
how is that bad?
Well, hold on. Think
Can you explain why is it bad? Can you explain why?
Got her.
Because why should your focus in life only be to try and become rich, which is incredibly unlikely?
Listen,
everyone's gonna get a Bugatti.
Kelly, I grew up with a saying from my dad. My dad said, anyone who says money can't buy happiness doesn't have any.
I think that maybe if they use better examples, like Andrew Tate, not versus Vosh, Andrew Tate versus the mechanic. I'd rather be the mechanic because I'm not trying to sexually exploit women, but I'm also successful. Okay. Oh, they say vouch to make fun of him. Ah, okay. Okay, that's pretty epic, Pogger, dude. Gotcha. Okay. I thought my attack already for purchasing items during escape attempts. All of it is lost on death. Well, no fucking shit, right? That's how this whole fucking thing works, no?
Like,
No,
if there's a thing in life that you
that
want,
much
money will facilitate it. That's the point. So
also,
I don't think it's like.
Also, I want to talk about. I want to.
Well, sure, but that goes away at a certain point. Like once you make a certain amount of money, but I get what they're saying. Sure, but they just gave two. They just gave two kind of extremes.
It's gonna be
Well,
fucking
I mean,
I
Vosh
also
isn't
wanna-
as bad as Tate,
I
but
also
you get
want
my
to
point.
point out to like the effectiveness of messaging, right? So you got somebody who's struggling to keep a roof over their head, living paycheck to paycheck. What answer do you think is going to be the better message for them that's more than likely to bring them to your ideology or what you're talking about?
living
piss and shit your pants.
Well, let me finish.
Okay.
Capitalism is what's
Here-
screwing you over.
If you're poor, here's the best message: go to any fast food restaurant and buy something to eat. And as they give you the food and they ask for your payment, shit your pants. They will just tell you to leave with your food. If you do that every single day, you can get free food for life. Okay? Just make the rounds, go to different food places, and sometimes don't shit your pants. Okay? It'll work. Or, you know, you can start crying or something. You don't always have to just shit your pants, but you get my point, okay? It's effective. It works. I'm telling you. It's effective.
Or,
Hey, baby. What's up?
hey, here's what you
How
can
much
actually
they
do.
have,
Here's what you can actually do to maximize what you've got right now. What do you think is the better message? Because that person, I can guarantee you, does not know how to smash capitalism overnight to make their life better.
Life hacks.
So the simpler
Shit your
answer-
pants.
Well,
Shit
but
your
we're talking about
fucking
effective
pants.
messaging. What's going to be more likely to bring them to you to seek more of your help or more of your information?
I mean, it's
Right?
incredibly attractive. Yeah, it's like a honeypot thing. I can see a lot of people
It's
being
a
like,
means
oh,
to.
nice.
Well, we're not talking about being rich. We're just talking about how you have more influence over your life.
But it's
you want.
very
It's a good strat.
unattainable.
Obviously, well,
Hold up,
but-
hold up.
Hang on, no, because it doesn't go that way. They look at what the unattainable things are that you have, envy it, but then they tell you, here are the baby steps to just get more of what you've already got and use that to get even more. Right? So it's very direct, it's very immediate, it's something actionable that they can do, and then you got the progressive leftist person who's like, well, the problem is capitalism and we need to get rid of capitalism. And it's like, okay, well, how do I get rid of capitalism tomorrow so I'm not worried about having a roof over my head tomorrow?
I
Well,
hard
left-leaning
disagree.
people, I wouldn't be like, oh, capitalism, just give up and go to McDonald's and deal with it.
I hard
I'd be like, well,
Destiny
then study
disagrees
and like,
with
get a better job. Yeah, sure, the one that you actually enjoy.
I don't think any of that. I don't agree with any of that red pill advice being actionable. I think most of it is snake oil. They just have
Oh, yeah.
they've attractively wrapped it up in a big package. I get
Okay, when it comes to the red, okay, they were just talking about, I thought we were talking about basic advice. Red pill advice is selling you a dream, like a dishonest dream that's never going to really happen. You're not all going to become rich. But when they advocate like just sell like autonomy over your own decisions, I suppose you say, or agency over your own actions and decisions, that resonates with people a lot because it like that actually is helpful, right? And that's generally seen as more conservative. I wouldn't call it necessarily red pill. You know, so there's like a little bit different. But I thought we were just talking about like the basic advice of like get your shit together, not be. Well, I guess we are kind of talking about being rich. Like that's just dumb. Like I mean, I guess if it makes you work harder, God bless you. But you know, not everybody can be rich. There's nothing wrong with like gravitating towards a job that's not like being rich. Just become like, oh, you know, I told you before, like welder and shit.
guarantee you that the
50.
vast majority of quote unquote red pill people that listen to these podcasts and get motivated to go to the gym and lose weight and all that shit, they drop off the f***ing wagon in probably 2 weeks tops. Because
But-
just
but
telling
Wait,
it
you
somebody,
have no way of proving. Hold on, you have
but
no way of
it
proving
has-
that, right?
I have all of the history of human psychology. Just telling someone, go do it, you can do it, you can do it. That's not the way to motivate people. Like there are
It's true. It's the same thing with like weight loss. You have to build like an overall pattern. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's what you want to start with, like the basics, because you'll be able to build slow patterns. That's why I've been like really on this kick of like, don't try to lose weight, try to get healthier, and you will lose weight. Like this is the longest that I've adhered to like a health program before ever. I haven't lost as much weight as I used to. Like I would do things for like 10 weeks and I'd lose 30 pounds because I was like, I know how to like count my calories and shit, but then it just would fall off when one bad thing goes on. I've been consistently like getting my blood sugar down, like slowly. And that's like my focus. I haven't even really weighed myself because I don't really give a fuck about that right now. And it's just been working like longer. I feel like I'm making better protocols. Like I'm eating better. Even if I'm having bad days, I'm eating better overall. So, yeah, that's why you should try to focus on that long-term habit-changing stuff and not get really, really frustrated if you fall off the wagon a little bit.
real steps that you can take towards building like positive routines and stuff. None of these techniques are ever talked about in any red pill show ever. It's always just like, you're a piece of you can do blah, blah, blah. And it might make you feel empowering for a little bit, the same way that talking about implementing any change can make you feel like you've already implemented it, but those people fall off the wagon. Like, you've never gone to like a red pill podcast, live show, or anything, and seen a whole bunch of like shredded Giga Chads and shit in the audience. That's never the case.
Well, like I talked to these red pillars. I talked to these red pillars in certain discords, and what I find is that they've bought into the red pill ideology, but they did like oftentimes fell off the wagon, but they still buy into the ideology. So they still carry the message. They still talk about it. They still hang around with red pillars and stuff, even though they're not actually going and doing the self.
Yeah, I want to ask this: do you think that there's not an over? Do you not think that if you were to take a red pill convention versus like some kind of fucking lib convention, you wouldn't think you'd find more people that are physically fit?
You might, but it's not because they became fit listening to red pill shit. It's just because of the types of people that tend to run in both communities.
That makes sense. Sure.
Red pill people don't give good self-improvement advice. They just tell you to self-improve. It's about as worthless as lefty people saying, what?
What's the bad advice that they give?
Just telling somebody to just improve or just fix your diet or just go to the gym is worthless advice. And trying to motivate somebody through like making them feel bad is also bad self-help advice. It doesn't work.
Is that how they give the advice?
Yes.
Is that how they give it?
Yeah,
they just say go work out. Is that all they say?
Basically, yeah.
Unless
there's people.
I haven't seen a single person in like in the red pill sphere give you a routine that you can actually operate on. Here, I'll give you some right now. You should start with 5x5 if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to like well, first of all, I would generally recommend doing what is it called? It's like fuck, I can't like use words anymore. I used to be so educated. Compound movements. I would recommend doing like full squats, shit like that. Even if you need a safety bar, if you have the money for it, get a safety bar. It's something that I should probably invest in. But right. So like 5x5, just learning how to like properly lift, getting your technique together, because that's going to be the first at least month of training. If you've never done it before, you need to learn how to squat, you need to learn how to bench, and you need to learn these things. They're not as easy. Like, oh my God, stop fucking jumping around. Jesus fucking Christ. Sorry. Sorry, guys. That wasn't me. That was a goblin took over my body. It's just a little frustrating, right? Learn technique, right? Do that for a while. Learn these principles. Buy Wendler 531. There's multiple versions, like $10 ebooks. These are really good things to look for. A routine is more than just numbers and letters on a page. It has to do with progressive overload, safe deloading protocols. It actually requires a lot more research than you'd think. I'm just getting my shit stirred right now. Holy fuck. So there you go. It's a lot more than just that. Don't go on to like don't go on to bodybuilding.com and look at an article, because they're not going to give you a routine. They're going to give you weight. They're going to give you exercises with numbers. They're not going to give you progressive overload. They're not going to give you proper deloading protocols. They're not going to tell you what happens when you're having a bad week and then how you shouldn't just give up just because you had a bad week. They're not going to give you like actual like advice. They're just going to give you some like watered down bullshit fucking routine that they could sell you, that they can make you like click on and constantly go to, so you'll engage in the advertisements. So go look at something real. Wendler 531 is a great program that'll teach you how to lift properly. There's a whole big section in there of that. These are the things that you want to like gravitate towards more than anything else.
People that have given more complicated or better, more nuanced things in terms of building habits or anything that I've just never heard before. But most of the red pill shit I've heard just sounds like the get ultra motivated shit and blah blah blah.
So even though he's not technically red pill, but he's kind of adjacent. Hold on. All right.
Destiny, I have a question. We've seen the tens of thousands of people that go up to Jordan Peterson crying, saying how he's made their life better. Tell me the person running up
the tens of thousands of people. I disagree.
That's
there's a couple of them.
I don't know.
That's hyperbolic.
Though tens of thousands of people don't go up to Jordan Peterson and say that you made my life better. I would also say Jordan, generally speaking, is he does a little bit more than just like give you like baseline advice. For the most part, it seems to be a little bit more in depth.
Not aware.
And
he's got a 7.
There's like 70 million people talking about it. I don't know who's saying anything.
Well, I was just going to suggest Jordan Peterson, because one of the things that people praise him for is that people say it's profound, but honestly, it's really simple. The whole clean your room thing, and people are like, oh my god.
Hold on. No, wait.
See, that's great advice though. That's simple. Like that's good advice though. Like that's actually explaining more than just like workout. Like cleaning your in order to work out, you need to like understand like training protocols. Cleaning your room is something basic. Like you shouldn't need to be have like an explanation of like which like how to clean your room, unless you just have like a fucking failure of parents or something. That's better advice than just like, oh, work out, because like you need to know more than just work out. Just go to the fucking gym. You need to know like what you should be doing at the gym. Like the first, like really for the first month in the gym, for some people, you just need to get into the gym, even if you don't do a whole lot, because you need to get comfortable with it. Especially like fat people or people that are self-conscious. Like it's a good idea to just get into the gym, be in the habit of doing that for like 3 or 4 weeks, even if you just walk for 10 minutes, just because you get there and you get more comfortable and you'll feel better about being there. Because people who are self-conscious about being in the gym, they obviously get their fucking ass kicked by some dumbass bone hider boss. And then they get pissed off and then they fucking rage out. So, very important stuff, obviously, guys. Speaking facts here, am I right?
but it's pretty basic and simple, and it is very tangible and actionable, and it does help people.
Jordan Peterson doesn't count as like one of these red pill guys because he actually does give good.
Yeah, that's what I said. Red pill adjacent.
Okay, yeah. Jordan Peterson counts as a good advice giver because Jordan Peterson has written books and is a psychologist and knows how to help people self-improve. But that's not what you're finding on 99% of like self-improvement red pill fucking shows. It's usually just a whole bunch of fucking abuse to try to make you feel bad about yourself to get like the motivation, the agency to go and do shit.
That's true, but think about the original claim that this hinged off of. What I was saying was that conservatives overall are better at this messaging because it's more tangible, and you can find plenty of examples of red pill adjacent people, as well as the red pill people, who are providing a more tangible, simple answer for people that is at least more immediately actionable for them, even if they fall off the wagon soon afterward.
I think we're also discounting something. It's not just the advice. Because these people live a certain lifestyle, there's a constant reinforcement of that motivation of a potentiality or a future that is better than the one that they currently live. So it's not just they say the right things. They also emulate a lifestyle constantly. They constantly showcase that, and they're constantly around the women that these guys would want to date, constantly doing the things that they want to do, that the people who are watching are much more likely to engage in positive behavior because they see that reinforcement all the time. It's not one-dimensional.
I understand, but the lifestyle is snake oil, right? Like, maybe I'm jaded because I come from my parents did Amway and shit. All the big Amway people, the way that they got rich was not by being good business people and building successful business. It was by selling self-help tips for Amway. It's the same thing with a lot of these red pillar guys. These guys aren't like super ultra successful businessmen that like made it in like the real world. They got popular on YouTube, pandering to audiences, right?
Yeah,
like, no offense to any of the red pill guys, like most of these guys made most of their money on YouTube, giving self-help. But to what? Become what? YouTubers? Like,
hold on. I would agree with you on the financial point. I do not agree with you on the fitness point. I do not believe that the actionable step that you have to take to make your physical health substantially better is as complicated as trying to get rich from scratch.
Again, not a single red pill person I've ever seen offer a decent like routine to people to actually get their shit together. They don't talk about the psychology of going to the gym when you're self-conscious and how you have to just get to the gym and just like be there for the first couple weeks. They don't talk about learning how like proper technique. They don't talk about proper like programming. So you can lift like safely and effectively. They just say work out. That's not advice. Working out is more complex than people I think. It's much more complicated to like really get into it, especially doing it safely. And especially if you're older, it could be like really fuck you up if you lift incorrectly. It's like, yeah, I haven't seen a single red pill. They never bring it up. They just say, stop being fat and exercise. You'd think I would have come across somebody saying like, oh, here's a really good routine to like learn how to like, work out, blah, 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 blah. Nobody does that. They just say a thing that's very obvious to people. Stop, like lose weight and work out. Like, no shit.
That's not the same thing. If someone's constantly reinforcing to me how I need to get physically in shape, and then by doing so, this unlocks different things and this and that, and they're constantly doing that, I don't have to create a business plan. I don't have to do the most complicated thing. I have to essentially change my diet and then go to the gym a bit consistently. Now, maybe I won't get to the point where I'm
how do you do that? It's simple. It sounds easy. How do you change your diet? It's simple, but it's not. It's a very difficult thing to do, especially when you have like a lot of other things. So they don't say like, oh, in order to change your diet, you need to focus on this like a long term, start having some fucking nutrient dense food with every meal. Start there. Stop drinking your calories. Start there. Develop these patterns. Do these little things. So they don't really go into any depth. They don't really talk about the psychology behind it. Because like, yeah, no shit, don't be fat. But clearly, if you're fat to the detriment of yourself, you have some kind of a fucking psychological issue going on there. It doesn't have to be this deep one, but you clearly are being a fucking moron like I am because I'm fat. It's like, okay, how do you overcome that? Oh, okay, like you need somebody to sometimes to help you with that. You'd be like, well, it's basic. Yeah, okay, but like it's not as simple as this like little like, oh, just do a thing. Like, no shit, just go do a thing. Go make $1 billion. Okay, but if I don't tell you how to make $1 billion, you're obviously not going to be able to do it, right? Because I don't know how. Okay.
But I will make improvements just by showing up on a regular basis. So I reject the notion that just because they give bad advice on a financial level, which I do agree with you, that it doesn't translate to make their lives markedly better in other areas.
Just by showing up on a regular basis. I'm like this participation trophy of fitness.
It's not just a participation trophy. If you take somebody who never goes to the gym ever versus someone who does and tries to make an effort for their diet, you're going to have substantially better results with the person who does. I'm not saying that they're going to turn into Sylvester Stallone, but there's actually incremental change that does happen to people who take a small amount of time at the gym on a semi-regular basis.
Sure.
I mean, the gym.
And also, there's a biological thing that changes as well, because just by the virtue of you doing the physical activities, you actually get a biological response that's almost instantaneous. So
nobody is saying the gym is bad, Adam. We agree on that part.
Hold up, that's not what I said. You don't listen very well, so every time you reply, it has nothing to do with what I just said. But what I was
about the gym.
Okay, go ahead, Charlie. Make your point.
I'm saying we all agree with you when it comes to the fitness and health and the gym stuff, but it's the other stuff we don't agree with.
Yeah, like don't let the men in.
He's just talking about the distinction between like selling something that is actionable to an individual for how to change their immediate circumstances.
Yeah, but we all agree with it, right? With the
no, you don't. No, you don't. Destiny just sat here and basically said that most of their advice is Sneako and unuseful, and I would disagree.
No, but he agrees with the gym stuff.
You don't even know the second half of what I was going to say.
No, but I know that he agrees with that because he spoke about it before.
Doesn't matter what he agrees with. We're talking about.
He said it's not actually like a robust pathway to anything. It's mostly just like a little baby. It's mostly really, I guess you'd say, a virtue signal. they don't really give you any actual pathways. They give you some pretty like generic advice without like actually going into depth. Like what do you do? What routine? What this? What that?
Okay, hold on. I'm just gonna ignore what you said because she's going off pointless points. But Destiny, when you said they don't give good advice that actually makes their lives markedly better, I would argue that both on.
Abby gets so heated when he debates people. It's fucking weird.
Not to actually have a relationship, but to fuck women.
Like that's the one thing I noticed about Abby. He gets really. I don't know if it's a debate strategy or what, but he gets super fucking personal when he gets like really irritated really quickly. He gets like he's very quick to get angry at people, and he like when somebody questions what he has to say, he starts getting like going off the fucking deep end. Like he gets like really confrontational. I think when he fucking talks to people, it's very bizarre. It's very bizarre.
I do think they give these guys better opportunities as well as for fitness related stuff and things like that.
And confidence, which helps them out in every other thing that they do.
His name is Thanos.
Did I kill him? Oh fuck! Foe slain. Oh, I have to kill people.
Don't blame him, honestly. Or he hasn't realized that he's muted.
I understand what you mean. I do think that, yeah, you're right. I think left-leaning people are worse about giving actionable individual, advice or whatever. But I do think that, like, red pill and progressivism, like, you know how progressivism, they just, like, sell fucking opiating people based on their systemic oppression. They're black people. The reason your life sucks and you don't have everything you want is because the system is just stacked against you. I think the red pill does that as well. They're like, they're lonely man. You're just lonely because of social media and sexual liberation of women, and they can have jobs now.
But Supreme, I think that's only a part of it. I think a part of it is not giving personal prescriptions. I think the other part that me and Ab were talking about is the demonization of agency as well. It's not just that left-wing people don't talk about
demonization of agency on the left.
What?
Oh, the definitely.
What?
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, if you talk in any space of love people, and I don't mean just Twitter and Twitch and shit, I'm talking about real life offline people.
No, this is not true.
They will demonize you if you say that some people should take agency.
No, they won't. They in online, sure. On the real world, they won't say that. This is terminally online. Nobody is going to give you shit if you say that people should have some more agency over themselves. What actually ends up happening is conservatives will just say systemic like issues don't exist at all. They don't really matter, blah, 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 blah. And then it's perceived as saying, and then when you say like, no, that's obviously wrong, that's perceived as saying like, oh, you don't think people should have agency over themselves, right? Like in the real world, that's like this is not happening. You're not saying like, yeah, there's some issues with the system, but you need to. It's just like what's happening is they're just saying like, oh, systemic racism doesn't exist. Like my mother's a conservative. She believes in like systemic oppression. Like she understands it, but she's like, yeah, you still need to get your shit done. Like at the end of the day, that's the way that you have to operate. But there are people who are just like, nah, this shit doesn't fucking exist. Online spaces, like anytime you're like, yeah, maybe you should shower every day. It might make you feel better. No, you're depressed. You might as well just kill yourself now. Like that's kind of the general sentiment. But no, it's not like happening that much in the real world. Maybe I'm just too old and I'm not seeing these fucking internally online people. But I just don't believe that it's that bad in that widespread of an area. So he likes to debate. Maybe I don't think that being confrontational is the best way to
especially if it's a minority group.
Demonize you for taking some agency in your own hands?
No, they demonize you for prophesizing that people should take agency.
Well, they do demonize individualism, right? So they see that as being very liberal, and that's not appropriate. That is anti-progressive, etc. Because in order to be progressive, we have to be more collective in our approach to things and tackle things on a system.
Yep.
Or even telling people to take accountability when it comes to certain aspects of their life that are unpleasant or not going well. Instead of like actually being supportive of that kind of messaging, they'll just be like, "Well, that's unfair. You talk about the system, systemic racism." I'm like, the entire messaging is always focused on the systemic stuff rather than the personal activism. So it's when you say the demonization of agency, that's where it comes from. It comes from the one-sided discussions that they traditionally have, and then the rejection of like personal accountability when it comes to a lot of circumstances. Like take rape for example. You can't even say anybody may have contributed to certain situations.
Andrew Tate saying women who've been raped should
okay, so I'm going to finish my.
Well, take rape for example. Why do we need to go to fucking rape? Jesus.
My point. You just interrupted with something that had nothing to do with what I just said. And what I was trying to say is basically even on the topics of rape, right? If you tell people any actionable steps they can take in order to protect themselves and make sure they're good, people are saying you're creating rape culture.
No, stop. You're full of fucking garbage. What a dumb take. That's not happening to this way that you're trying to make it seem like. Historically, women will go out into the night and they'll be fucking like they would get like sexually assaulted, and instead of people saying like, yo, that shouldn't happen, they'll be like, well, what were you wearing? Right? Like the classic what were you wearing meme, right? People praise Ben Shapiro. I've seen fucking progressives say like, "Oh my God, base take Ben." When Ben's like, if you walk into like a high crime area with $100 over your head and you get robbed, it is 0% your fault. But you should not do that because you're gonna get robbed, right? People are like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. The problem is that somebody will just get like somebody will be like fucking blackout drunk and then they'll get fucked. It's like, yeah, but why'd she drink so much? this isn't the widespread problem. It's not happening in like that new, like this is not happening in the way that you're asserting that it's happening. It's just simply not happening the way that you're talking about. Do some people do that? Sure, right? Like when you have like there are some conversations that get like a little fucking crazy, but like it's not like this widespread issue. The fact that you want to take it to sexual assault is like very fucking bizarre to me, that you want to go there so quickly. Like why? Maybe you just have bad takes on sexual assault. Maybe that's a fucking problem.
Or stupid stuff like that. That is the demonization of agency.
Yes, exactly.
No. Give me an example of what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. So I'll just say one more time. I'll just repeat it so he can hear it. But basically,
there's
what I was
a
trying
difference between giving like
Good
advice
luck.
to people to like potentially stop them from getting raped, I guess, and then Andrew Tate saying
Kelly,
rape victims need to take responsibility.
Has anyone told you?
Kelly,
I'm just curious. Kelly, has anyone told you? Kelly, has anyone ever told you you have like Mr. Girl levels of like listening skills?
Yeah, see, like he's so weird. Abba's like kind of a shitty person. Holy fuck. Like he's obnoxious to talk to. Like she's being annoying, sure, but then he escalates it like to fucking disproportionately. All right, sounds like a man that doesn't have control over his emotions. Am I right, guys? Jesus Christ.
No, Abba, you just talk a lot. That's all.
Okay, well, you talk a lot too, but just nobody knows what you're talking about.
It's not a bad thing, but I'm just saying.
It is bad when you do it because you just derail conversations all the time.
Oh, I was talking about something you literally just said.
Well, he's talking about the left's or progressives' overall demonization of agency and individuals in the indivital, and so
he's talking about he brought it to rape.
That to Andrew Tate because he's not using Andrew Tate as an argument.
What are you talking about? He's talking. No, it was fair to compare it to Andrew Tate in that instance because Andrew Tate said shit about how like women that are raped have like a level of fucking control over their rape in some capacity. So it's fair what she said. So
didn't Destiny just tweet something as simple as, "Yo, you shouldn't engage in sex if you can't have complicated conversations around boundaries," and the entire world went bananas?
That was a little ignorant the way that he said it. First of all, it wasn't just happened. What actually happened is that a girl said that she, the guy that she was with took the condom off, even though she said that he should keep a condom on, and didn't like assert a particular boundary. And then after he took the condom off, Destiny's like, she just like went with it. And he was like, well, if you can't, he said it provocatively, which is what happens on Twitter, and I think that there's a level of intentionality to this being provocative because he's trying to have a base take. Instead of saying like, hey, listen, like if you're engaging in casual sex culture and you don't feel comfortable asserting a boundary with somebody, then like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't be engaging in casual sex culture. That's fair, but he said it in a provocative way. Also, it also kind of justifies like, yeah, just like taking off the condom even though you were told to wear one, right? So it's a little bit, it's not quite like the super like, oh my goodness, like he just said like a normal thing. It's like, no, yeah, like if you can't assert, if you feel uncomfortable asserting boundaries in casual sex culture, like, yeah, you probably shouldn't engage somebody in casual sex. At the same time, if you're a person, a guy, wear a condom if you're told to wear a condom and stop pushing boundaries. Like, you know what I mean? There's too much, like you're putting too much agency on this girl when the guy literally did a bad thing, right? It's good for her to stay out of there. If you feel like you're uncomfortable, but at the same time, also don't be a fucking scumbag and start taking off your condom just because you want it to feel better, even if you agreed to put it on in the first place.
Like it's ridiculous what like the left does with demonization of age. Like it's obvious that
sure.
If you're not a person that's ready to have some of these complex topics, then maybe engaging in sex isn't something you should do, and you should prioritize.
Or maybe you should just keep the condom on if you're going to wear it too. That's also a factor.
I was trying to figure out.
People took issue with that not because agency was being demonized. It's because they perceived that the focus was on the wrong party taking the agency to do or not do something.
That's a better way to say it than I said it.
In this case, it was the issue with the person selling
the victim's agency that they could have used. He didn't say that they were to blame for rape. Or I can't remember what the situation was, but he didn't say they were to blame for it. He just said, "Hey, here's a point on maybe how you could avoid."
It wasn't that reasonable. Destiny's a fucking goblin, okay? And I'm not even saying he's a bad person at all. He's a fucking goblin on Twitter. You know this. We know that. He knows it. He would say, "Yeah, I'm a fucking goblin on Twitter." Okay. He said he didn't say the guy should have wore the condom. He's like, well, if you can't, I already explained it. All right. He didn't say it in like a nice way. He's being a little provocative. He's trying to be he's throwing out some base takes, dude.
Situations in the future.
The problem is that a lot of the advice that's given to like avoid these things in the future is just really obvious shit, and it just comes across as patronizing. Like, I'm not saying that there can't be some useful advice, because there definitely can. But what I was talking about more like hyperbolic statements, like what Andrew Tate said, because he is a red pillar and that is the side where it's come from. I never meant that Abba specifically was saying that kind of shit. But it's like sometimes like, is that helpful? How does that help if we ask women to take responsibility for their?
Depends on the context of what you're talking about.
How does it help to tell men over and over again, don't rape?
Well, I think
reason
they're equally stupid. But like,
Destiny knows that it does help because he knows for a fact that most of the time that there's like some kind of sexual assault, it's not intentional. So I know he's being dishonest there. Like a lot of times it just comes down to like a lack of understanding of boundaries. You may not even be able to call it rape necessarily, but that's the education comes into like making sure that you get express consent because like, yeah, like men need to be, the problem is that men are not very emotional. I would say that most of the time when like a woman is put in a situation where they feel uncomfortable or they feel like they've been violated or they have been violated, a lot of those times are probably because she wasn't being direct in saying no, and then also the guy wasn't being emotionally intelligent enough to realize that she didn't want it, right? So women need to be more direct and men need to be more empathetic and understanding, right? Now that doesn't mean that every time is because of that, right? There's just times where guys will just like flat out rape girls, but we know that when it comes to this topic, it's a little bit more nuanced. So it's good to teach people to set strong boundaries while at the same time teaching people to respect other people's boundaries and make sure they get expressed, explicit, enthusiastic consent, right? He knows that. Come on.
The voice, you gotta stop doing the voice. Oh my god.
The reason why the reason why there's such a negative reaction to that type of advice is because historically we've had a long issue of people.
I don't know what to do. I can't have 20,000 fucking people. This conversation is so fucking autistic. Holy shit. It's like,
oh my goodness.
Of men raping women. It's like, what was she wearing? Was she drinking? Blah, blah, blah. And put all the agency on the woman, all the responsibility on the woman. And so there's been sort of this pendulum swing in the other direction, which is to say, no,
men
need to fix their shit. We're not responsible for this crap anymore. Which it shouldn't be. It should be somewhere around the middle where women, you know, and just vulnerable people in general are taking some precautions and such and looking out for themselves. And then men are also socialized to be a little bit less fucking rapey, right?
Yeah, the majority of rape is by partners, right? And it's like people by people you know. So it's like, yeah, okay. It's like we protect ourselves when we're walking down a dark alley, I guess. But it's like a lot of this stuff's quite obvious and it doesn't really help. Like there's not really anything to be gained by saying it.
So you can say some of these things are obvious, but in certain situations they don't appear to be obvious. There was a panel where we were talking about
they're obvious when you're like super like online. But I would say even these people probably don't even know how to manifest what they're saying in like the real world. Like what does it mean like an actual like way? You know, and it's not obvious to young people who are dumb as fuck. So
women should come for it as soon as possible, right? Because like
do I have hangover?
The possibility of convicting somebody in a rape case is already bad. Lack of physical evidence and blah blah blah, right? So coming forward as soon as possible, using rape kits, all of this stuff seems to be reasonable advice. But we can see that.
Fine. That's fine.
But no, but even that type of conversation is demonized. Oh my God, like she's dealing with all of this mental stuff and like, oh my, you should be talking to the men and blah blah blah. Like that type of shit happens. Maybe wherever you exist, that type of rhetoric doesn't happen. But somebody said you were from not from America, but here in America that shit happens. You would get demonized for saying, "Hey, women, you should come forward as soon as possible."
I mean, I can explain it a little bit if you want me to, but it's like, so yes, in an ideal world, you should go directly to the police, and reality is.
Wait, you said if we wanted to, but we didn't take a vote.
Pardon?
No. Let her speak. God
What
damn
is alright? Other people.
No, I don't fucking want to.
But like in an ideal world, yes, that would always happen. But the thing is, women aren't not going to the police because they don't already know that. There's usually some other mitigating factor that's stopping them from going. So it's like we already know that we can go to the police station to report things, and I don't think there's any woman on the planet that doesn't know that. So it's like.
Don't you think we should pressure women to do that regardless of whatever?
Hold on.
Well, pressure's rough. So generally speaking, it's probably a good idea to go to the police right after it happens if you want some kind of justice. You may not get that justice. But that's the best way to do it. The problem is that in that moment, like after you've been sexually assaulted, it comes down to this. It comes down to like, well, first of all, a lot of these women, they don't even necessarily realize that they were sexually assaulted. It can get a little complicated, and there's can be like a lot of like a mentality that like it's like, what did I do wrong? How was I wrong? Oh no, he wasn't a bad guy. A lot of justification. But even if they don't have that justification, it gets down to like, okay, do I want somebody like basically probing into my vagina after I was sexually assaulted? It contributes to the trauma. You probably should come forward. Obviously, it would be best to get the person, you know, whatever. But maybe some people simply don't want to do that. You know, you probably should though. Sure. I guess there are some people who get demonized for saying stuff like that, but I feel like what's the intentionality? It's one of those things where it's like, how do you display it? Do you say like, oh, you should go there as soon as possible to make sure that justice gets done? Or are they saying it in a way that's like usually dismissive of what happened to them? Like, oh, well, you didn't go right to the police, so it didn't really happen to you. It's like that intentionality of like why you're saying a fact. I think that's important.
Circumstances exist.
No, because the reason is that.
And by pressure, I mean socially pressure. I don't mean directly on one individual, right? I'm saying socially, we should encourage this. You don't think we should encourage women to go to the police as soon as possible?
Encourage, not pressure.
Yeah,
that's the same thing socially.
You get raped by somebody.
Sorry, hold on, real quick.
Like
pressure and encourage are the same thing socially.
No, they're not. They're not the same thing. Why? They're different. Pressuring somebody has a negative connotation. Encouraging somebody has a positive connotation. We know that those are different things socially and literally.
It's the exact
same thing.
They're not the same thing.
They're not the same
They're actually the
That's
exact
exact-
They're not the same thing. At this point, he's just arguing to argue.
Literally not.
They're literally the same thing. Social encouragement is social pressure. If I ask you, do you want to smoke some crack, and I'm next to you, you'd say, oh, that's kind of a little bit of social pressure. It'd be cool if you smoked some crack. It'd be cool if you reported a rape at the police station. Social pressure and social encouragement are the same thing.
So
I don't
the
think
the
that's-
problem. So I think
We-
we
they're
think
just-
we
it's just
should
not.
encourage or pressure, however you put it. But the thing to keep in mind is that when people get raped, oftentimes by their partners,
Yeah, I'm fucking this bitch
there's
up.
a psychological thing that you end up dealing
Oh,
with.
fuck,
because
I'm getting-
you
now
kind
I'm getting fucked
A
up.
lot of times you end up convincing yourself or trying to convince yourself that there wasn't something wrong or that it was something that you did or something like that. There's a lot of psychology behind it. So it oftentimes takes some time to work through that psychology to get to the point where you actually realize, oh fuck, this really was.
Yeah, there's a lot of
what it
psychology
was.
behind not raping somebody too. You're horny, you're stupid, you're desperate, whatever. Yeah, of course. But that doesn't mean that you just give up on it. Otherwise, we should just not try to do anything for anything ever, because there's a lot of
We need-
psychology and pressure behind everything.
Yeah, I think that we should encourage people to come forward as soon as possible,
Whew.
but we also have to understand why
on,
it
bro,
is
I dodged
that
out
they
of
often don't.
I
There are
agree
other
with
mitigating
you.
factors as well.
I agree, which is why I said we should try to publicly pressure, or the other word that y'all want to use, but we should try to publicly pressure the people to come forward so that that messaging becomes more like
What the fuck?
more tangible to them than all the other mental things that
I'm
are
seeing
happening.
so many
Because
lists.
I mean,
the
I actually
likelihood of having a conviction after 5 years when you come forward, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't call out people that do these things, blah blah blah, but when we do wait this amount of time, it becomes unlikely that a person will have to serve any type of punishment or there'll be any type of justice, right? So
I do think it would be good if there were more things put in place so that women would feel more comfortable to go do that. Because going to the police station, which is always majority male, it's just like I've had to do
What'd
it.
you
It was
do?
not a fun experience.
That's the question,
If there
yeah.
were more like clinics or some kind of options that you could go to that weren't like going to the male.
Did I kill her or
police
did she
station
kill
all the
me?
time.
Oh, I
that
killed
would
her.
also be good. It's
Cool.
it's not like the best experience.
I don't think
all the
so.
time.
I don't think that this is a really good measure of like demonizing agency so much as it is like a double standard for men and women. People just expecting less from women than they are from men, which I think happens
Maybe,
in left-leaning
sure.
spaces for sure. Because I think
Sure, like when you have like Ethan going on and saying like, "Oh, famous rich guys shouldn't be able to date on like their fans or something." It's like you're taking that autonomy away from their fans that want to fuck them, right? Like that's the reality. That's just a fact of the matter. They want to fuck them. They want to fuck the rich famous guy. When you say like, well, that can't happen because coercion will happen. The existence of a power dynamic doesn't mean that there's abusive power dynamic. So it's okay for rich guys to want to date or fuck not rich girls because those girls want to fuck them back. So you're just saying that those girls are too stupid to know what's good for them. Obviously, you should be very aware of like whatever power you hold in some power dynamic and create comfortable spaces. Blah blah blah. I've said stuff like that the whole fucking conversation. I don't need to reiterate myself. But like, yeah, that can be the general sentiment is just removing agency from women sometimes. So yeah, sure.
people expect the agency of men to look for signals of rejection and respect them or whatever the fuck, but then they don't expect women to like give them strongly or something like that.
Sure.
I don't think
Yeah.
this is like a blanket, whatever, removing of agency from individuals and promoting that as a virtue.
Yeah. I mean, I had a really good conversation yesterday with some friends talking about that, and like this, because we had like half
Friends,
the
ew.
group call was women and half the group call was men. It was really interesting to see just a vast different understanding and perspective of like what like men see in certain actions versus what women see in certain actions. Talking about actually the conversation with who was it who the whole thing brought the girl over after a date and said
It's Andrew
she said it's a
Callahan.
nice countertop and he said, yo, it'd look nicer with you on it.
Aziz.
Yeah, and like
He's
unanimously,
experimenting.
the men in the call were like, "Oh yeah, that he's testing to see if she
Yeah.
wants to fuck."
Absolutely.
We're jumping on it as confirmation, right? Unanimously, they said that, and the women in the call were like, "What? Are you fucking crazy?"
That's exactly what
no,
he's doing, for
I
sure.
would just be playful or something if a guy said
No
that.
shot. I don't even
You're saying
believe
the
the
women
women
are
believe
naive?
that.
You're
If the
saying
women
women
said
are
that, then they're
naive?
so f***ing stupid. All of them need permanent f***ing caretakers, and they should be adopted by the state.
And so yeah, there's like
Christ.
very different understanding of both sending and receiving signals from men to women.
Well, no, women aren't that stupid. They know that's a tester. If they say that, women will just be like, "Oh, this guy's being gross and disgusting." That's it. That's all it is. That they're not going to be like, "Oh, I don't know what's happening here." They're just being playful. No, that motherfucker wants to fuck you, and you know that. Women know that. These women are just fucking lying. I don't know what to tell you. Like I know that my wife would just be like, "Ugh," and then she'd probably fuck the person anyway because she probably like them. You know, that's what women do. They fuck people that they like, even though it's a bad idea. That's why women are fucking stupid. So the base. That's why it's so easy to. That's why I got my wife. She's too fucking dumb to know better.
And that's something that so I think that's something that should definitely be talked about a lot more and opened up about, and just so that there's more cross.
I'd say it was more like when during the Andrew Callahan situation, there was a moment where one of the girls was like, we were together alone, and he wouldn't take the hint. I didn't want to like sleep with him. And to me, that suggests something like this. This is a better example. Like, let's say a dude's like, "Yo, you want to like You want to go fuck in the bedroom? You want to go to the bedroom and have sex? He's being very direct that he wants to sleep with you in the bedroom. And maybe the girl says, oh, why don't we just stay here? So to her, she's saying, no, I don't want to sleep with you. But to him, it's like, oh, you want to just fuck me on the couch? Right? Like that's the better conversation about like directness and I guess emotional intelligence. Whereas like, you know, we should teach that guy to be a little bit more understanding of what she's saying. But then we should teach that girl to just be a little bit more direct, you know? And if you're like, well, he might hurt her. Maybe, but unless, I mean, I don't, then if she's afraid that every interaction that she has with somebody, she might get hurt, then unfortunately, she's just going to have to like make sure that her dad signs off on every relationship that she goes through because she doesn't have enough agency to be a person. Like, yeah, those power dynamics do exist, but most guys won't just rape you on the, like, if you say no. I'm sure it happens, but you know, I mean, you know, you can't just think that you're always going to get hurt every time you say no. If you feel like that's happening, then either you're somehow picking the worst men in the world, or you just aren't strong enough to be like, no, I don't want to sleep with you, you know. And if you feel like you don't want to get put into a situation where you'll feel pressured, don't be alone with them for a long time, you know.
Explanation of the differences between the way men see things and what they're looking for, and the difference between how women see things and what they're looking for. And I think that would help out in that equation.
Zonia, you know I love you, right? Like, were the women involved in this like, were they people that go outside often? Like, I find it hard to believe that a panel of women would have thought that wasn't like trying to hit on them in some way. Like, are you saying that every woman that was in this panel that you're talking about?
It was pretty. I mean, it was a small like call, right? But yeah, it was evenly divided, men to women, and but yeah, it was they pretty much were like, "What? What are you talking about?" So yeah.
Well, they haven't gotten the claw, so yeah.
Supreme, do you feel like now that you've listened a little bit more, do you feel like there is some element of the left that demonizes agency?
Demonizes
Probably,
agency?
sure,
No,
some
I'm not
element.
sure. I think that the left is worse about opiating people and like patting them on the back for not taking more agency or something, or for feeling like the agency that they've taken hasn't resulted in fruit, or you know, it hasn't like bore fruit or whatever the fuck. But demonizing agency, I'm not so sure. I have seen some examples of what you're talking about where people have a really shallow.
Why is it so hard?
I think the distinction is that like on the left, we tend to focus more on certain things where like individual agency is not. There are certain problems in society where that can't be solved by individual agency, but people have some people I have seen have a shallow engagement with that where they say stuff like charity is a band-aid, charity can't be the fix for this, and then they extend that to say charity is useless. Like no, good things can come out of charity. Fine, sure, maybe there are some problems for which charity shouldn't be the only solution or something, but I don't think that extends to like a blanket.
Well, some of them take it further. The institution of charity only exists because of the capitalist pigs, and we should just have socialism.
Sure, yeah. And I would say,
well, I mean, like ideally, we shouldn't need charity. We're always going to need it, but like ideally, like all these needs will be met. But like it's just not going to happen. Like we shouldn't need breast cancer charities, but we have to get them because we need more funding for breast cancer. Or maybe breast cancer is not the best example because they get like a lot of funding. But I think you understand what I'm saying. Penis cancer. We need more funding for that, guys. Okay, not too much though, because it's pretty small. I'm making a joke.
The further left you go, the more I think that there's not a demonization of agency, but that agency is completely removed from people on the bottom or something like that, and we can have no expectations of individuals. I understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, that's a way better way of putting it.
I gotta get more deflect in my
I see it
builds.
as more of a agency isn't solving the problem, and again, like you were saying,
or even like
people at the bottom.
You can do. It's futile because the system is stacked against you.
Or it's actually bad to do so, because if you try to encourage people to have agency, you're actually doing an evil thing. In the case of like telling people to take care of their own safety and their own security, whether it be like arming yourself, whether it be like taking these classes, like telling people this is a prescription you should take is actually harming them or contributing to rape culture or whatever kind of culture.
I think people are pretty bad in general at both overestimating and underestimating how much control they have over their lives in certain aspects. And I think that's just across the board.
Abba, I think you're just talking about specific values or action, or what you're talking to speaks to the specific values of left people, because there are certainly conservatives who think that taking the agency to do certain things is bad, taking the agency to get an abortion, taking the agency to, whatever, take your 14-year-old to consider like gender transitioning or something like that.
Well, no, I think the abortion topic is a bit different. I think their problem isn't that you have agency in your life. Their problem is that you'd have agency over what they consider to be a human life. That's a different question and a different topic at all. I don't think I hear conservatives trying to take away people's agency for the most part, but I certainly don't think abortion is an example of them wanting to take away people's agency.
That's an example of them granting agency to a fetus.
Exactly. So it's a different discussion.
I suppose.
Yeah, for sure.
No, you may disagree on what a fetus is. I don't really care. That's not I'm not anti-abortion, whatever it might be. I'm generally pro-choice, but I'm trying to say that I don't think that's their mindset they're coming from.
Okay, maybe this is kind of a red herring then. Still, I think maybe if I had some time to think about it, I could think of some better examples. But I think again, you're talking about taking the agency to do things that contradict the values of left-leaning people, not necessarily the agency itself.
No, hold on, wait, stop. Hold on, wait. It is a fact that conservatives tend to be more empowering and give more agency than liberals. There's literally the phrase, conservatives never see themselves as poor people, just temporarily embarrassed billionaires, right? Conservatives, every conservative feels like, because that's what they're told, anybody could be anything, you can do whatever, like America's the freest country on the planet, everybody comes here because you've got the opportunity to be anything. Conservatives constantly sell that empowering mindset. And it feels like people on the left tend to attack people that are successful by equating every single measure of their success to luck, right? This guy had rich parents, this guy went to Harvard, this guy was white, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When left-leaning people focus on systems so much, you can never really get credit from systems, or the credit you get from systems sucks, and all systems are used to tear people down, right? If somebody's successful, it's just because they were set up to be successful. And if somebody's not successful, it's because of white supremacy or colonialism or whatever, right? That's a pretty disempowering system to live inside.
And I also will say, from a minority standpoint, this is one of the biggest pet peeves I have, because all discussions are always just focused on systemic stuff, and if you bring in a different side of the aisle, you're ostracized or called a coon or whatever the fuck it might be. That is a form of demonization, though while not direct, actually plays into the whole idea of you being a perpetual victim, even the whole idea of like model minority things like that. Yeah, it's like most black people want to be model minorities. Like, it's this whole thing that's oppressive inherently. I just reject these notions. So whilst
usually when it comes to like model minorities, they're bringing it up in the context of like, oh, look at like Asians, they're doing really well. Why aren't you doing well? Clearly it's not because you're oppressed in some capacity or there's like any systemic oppression. It's just like you. That's usually what it's kind of used as.
And not see the demonization. Sometimes it's not always in what they say, but what they don't allow other people to say, or how they demonize other people for saying those things. And that definitely happens in minority communities all the time.
Yeah, look at Candace Owens' whole like leaving the plantation thing, right?
For us, it's like pick me is what we get as trans people.
I wouldn't say that's demonizing agency. I would say that that's implicating somebody for the agency that they're taking for doing something that's contradicting the values of that community or something. When somebody
that isn't with the collective, you kind of get labeled a traitor because you're not going to be part of the collective.
Were you on my stream?
Whoa, hold on. When not being part of the collective is because you're taking agency. They're demonizing agency. I don't really care what you call it.
Their agency to do something that undermines like their own best
from their
interest.
perspective.
Were you here when we were doing the math book Wicked Supreme?
No.
Did you see any of that, Abba?
Wait, I might have. Can you describe it? Was it the thing?
It's the minority math book to help black people learn how to do algebra.
Oh my! It's the most racist shit ever.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't see your stream on it.
I had a guy that wanted to come and argue, and we went through the book like chapter by chapter, whatever, and like it's pretty insanely fucking crazy.
Why? What is that?
It's racist. No, call it what it is.
So I would say, I
argue encouraging infantilization even is a form of demonizing agency, because you're literally taking people's ability to self-determination and turning them into children of the state or children of circumstances. And
I suppose there's some pockets of people that are talking about how like SATs are racist and we should like get rid of them, instead of understanding that like it's not like that black people don't know how to do fucking SATs. It's that some of the people, just generally poor people, aren't really given the same tools. So instead of focusing on making a new fucking test for everybody, maybe we should just focus on giving people like the right amount of education.
Moving their adulthood. There's a lot of different ways that these things happen. Take the agency of an 18-year-old and whether or not they could consent to things. The left will always say, well, you're not ready to actually have sex. That is a demonization of agency. I don't know how you don't see that, because they're constantly trying to alleviate the responsibility of the individual.
I was ready to fuck when I was like fucking 15, dude. I would have fucked my teacher. Her name was Miss Dorsa. I used to just go into class and look at her ass the whole time. I feel so bad for that fucking woman. I feel so bad. Like, could you just imagine being like a teacher and all the fucking boys are just staring at you the whole time? Like, it's disgusting. I feel terrible. I don't know. I feel terrible for her. I feel terrible.
Every issue.
I think I can answer this. I think I'm just being autistic about your use of the word demonization. I think I agreed with this. I feel like I already talked about this a lot, right? I said you're right. I think the left does more to sort of try to remove the agency or like opiate people or fucking pat them on the back for things not working out and saying, don't worry, no matter how much agency you express here, you wouldn't have gotten your way because the system is stacked against you. I agree with that, but I don't think necessarily like demonizing agency. I would say is if you ever do anything, it's a bad thing.
Well, no. That's a weird way.
Let me bridge the gap.
That's a weird way to take it. Because you pose that to me. When I say demonization,
you're going to talk over the black
basically
guy?
by definition, it's making something seem wicked or threatening or bad.
Like
that's what it means. That's what it means. And so when someone is 19 or 20, they want to fuck somebody, but then people are like, you're not ready. You've just done a bad thing or something bad has happened to you. Yes, they're basically saying that you don't have the ability to consent. You don't have the ability to make an adult.
Yeah, you know what the problem is that like if you're let's say you're 19 and you fuck like a 40-year-old or something, you probably are gonna regret that decision. But it's not going to be traumatic. And this is the problem. Everybody's so disproportionate. Like, they're like, yeah, when I was young, I fucked a guy who was like fucking 40 and I was only 19 or 18. And it's like, but you don't have a trauma from that. Unless they did something traumatic to you. You like, you're okay. You might have been like, going back, you might have been like, you know what? I wish I didn't do that. but it's not like this huge thing where they're fucking traumatized for life. There are some things that you do that might not be perfect for you that just contribute to like life experiences that'll be better for you as you just get older. It doesn't have to be this whole deep thing.
That is removing people's agency and making it seem like it's a bad thing that they want to be able to make these choices. So I would call that the demonization of agency. Yes, absolutely.
Critical? Or
No, yeah, I don't know. I think it's still disconnect.
Okay.
So I
You
think
can call it
we're
like stigmatizing. You can use a different word. It's the same.
Not
thing,
even
though.
stigmatizing. It's more like just coming up with reasons why a person's agency is
More like
irrelevant or
coming.
that it has no use or something like that. It's
So-
removing a person's agency.
stigmatized. So this is what I'm thinking. So Supreme, I think you're seeing like demonization of agency would be a much more explicit and direct thing of like agency bad, doing anything independent of the group is bad. But a lot of leftists actually do think that independence and agency are necessary and a good thing at times. The question is, do they agree with the type of agency you have taken?
else is there?
And when
Right.
they don't agree with it, that's when they demonize you and label you as like, you know, a traitor or, you know, a C word or.
I don't think
pick me or
I don't think this is what we're talking about. I think we're just talking about in general how much control does somebody have over their destiny. That's essentially what we're talking about.
Their
And
destiny.
conservatives try to make
He
it
said
sound
his
like
name.
everybody is like the master of their own destiny. They can do whatever they want, and people on the left sometimes make it seem like you're just a victim of the system and nothing you can do is ever going to change that.
Yes.
I
That's the
said that
whole.
about
That's the
5,
whole.
10 minutes ago. That people
No,
would
but that's the
over
whole,
and
like,
underestimate the amount of control they have over them.
That's the whole political landscape, right? Conservatives want decisions to be made as local as possible, and as leftists, we think that there are some things that are best left up to the state or federal government, right? Because it's not reasonable to leave that into the hands of individuals in that turmoil or fight.
Nah, Papa God. I did a 41-year-old as a 19-year-old, and it was amazing. But at the same time, she was older and I was younger. Oh, it was a girl? Hey, base, dude. Base as fuck.
Is where a lot of this happens.
I mean, I feel like older men, like once you hit like that 30, you're probably going to be better in bed than like a fucking 20-year-old. So you're probably better off fucking an older guy. Only if you want to have sex, though, because they're not going to respect you enough to want to be in a relationship. And if they do, they're weirdos, you know? Because, like, what do you have in common with a fucking 18-year-old, bro? What the hell? But hey, God bless, you know? You know, it's fucking them is one thing, but like, gonna date like an 18-year-old at 30? Damn, I don't know. Maybe they just don't want to, like, hear him talk or something. I guess they still don't respect you then by that logic, but... So, okay, anyway, fuck. I won't go into that.
Some people incorrectly place too many things at the level of the state, and that's where conservatives win.
I mean, there's a reason why all
Well, I
the
got
gym
a
shit right now is
shotgun.
associated with the right, and health at every size is associated with the left. That's all I'm saying.
Ooh, shotgun blast.
Wait, what stuff? Sorry, I missed that.
That's true,
Gym
though.
stuff on the right, what stuff on the left?
Health at every size.
You
Oh,
take damage, your
yeah.
cast...
Yeah,
chain
fair. Yeah,
lightning.
certainly.
Yeah,
I think
sure
this
what
is
it
very
is.
good. But even then, that's promoting a person's agency to eat whatever the fuck they want.
No, stop. That's attacking a person's agency to lose weight because you're going to be a victim of no matter what. Your metabolism is always fucked, and there's nothing you can do about it.
No, it's not. It's attacking.
I can't tell if you're trolling right now. It's okay. I'm playing StarCraft, so I'm getting triggered if you're
I'm sorry. The
trolling me.
healthy at every size is about it's about discouraging people from making fun of other people for being fat or judging other people for being fat. It's about
but that's
giving
a
the
good
agency to
thing.
people to be as unhealthy as they
It's
want.
not a
No,
good
it's
thing.
also-
All right, we're just going to get, like, I already explained a little bit. Like, first of all, I think health at every size, or at least what it should be, maybe I'm not right about what it is. It should be more about, like, you know, in general, body positivity should be about loving yourself so you can make positive changes if you're unhealthy. It is possible to be overweight and healthy, right? Now, it's not possible to be as overweight as I am and be healthy, right? So overweight may be 20 pounds overweight. But people shouldn't just judge you, right? It's not going to help you have better outcomes. To me, health at every size is like, listen, you don't need to really be concerned with like what, like if I'm even am healthy, that's really my responsibility to worry about. And frankly, you don't actually care. You're just concerned trolling because you want to bully fat people, which is also an absolute truth, and you know it. But mostly it's about like, hey, listen, let's say you're overweight, and let's say you're 350 in my weight, and let's say I get down to 300 and I'm healthy, like I get to like healthy, I get my blood sugar to control everything. That's good. I should still make progress towards losing weight, but obviously, like, I'm healthy now, so as long as I keep an update with my doctor and I keep things straight, like, I'm okay. And you shouldn't really be judging me just by virtue of my fucking existence, okay? You know, and it's also not really your responsibility to care. If you want to help people lose weight, it's not the body positivity isn't making people fat. It's like a lot of systemic issues, and it's just like bullying of people. If anything, it's how lazy we are as a society because of technology, and how we're not really educating people in like health class how to make food. We should teach people to walk at the gym. I know it sounds so silly, but that's like step number one for anybody who's overweight. Basic. Well, it should be focused on health more than anything else, but you know, these are some of the unique issues that we need to deal with more than anything else. But like body positivity isn't making people fat. Okay. Like a lot of times it's just the resources available aren't helping people lose weight. Like you'll see like these ridiculous, like like magazines, like, oh, you want to lose a lot of weight. Here's what you do. They give you a fad diet that doesn't work. And then you get really discouraged. So there's definitely bigger issues in different ways.
The message is a
Moving
disaster.
agency.
It's like the ACAP message, right?
It's
Like the
also
message is
moving
terrible.
Wait,
healthy at any size.
What part about that do you disagree with?
Health at every size is saying you can be healthy and beautiful no matter what size you are, and it's okay. It's okay to be a victim of your body, or it's okay to be a victim of hypothyroidism. It's okay to be a victim of your fast metabolism. There's nothing you can do to change it. That's okay. The more extreme version of health at every size is that. It's not a celebration of agency. It's a direct contradiction.
Slogan. Yeah, and it's a slogan that's a real problem, kind of like ACAB, right? Those
Okay,
kinds of
yeah, you're
slogans
right.
are not
I think there are definitely parts where it's like, yeah, it's just part of your biology. There's nothing you can do about it. You're just going to be fat. You're right. That part of it, sure.
Yeah, it's
I guess
obviously
there's other
wrong.
parts of it where people talk about being fat phobic or something like that. I think that's more about judging people for their life choices or something. But yeah, sure.
Yeah, these general like feel-good slogans are, I don't know, they just seem like they're giving people a lot of excuses to not try and do things that are better for themselves.
Maybe.
I mean, the reality is a lot of people are really unhealthy, though. They just don't necessarily look at it, and a lot of fat people get dogged on for being lazy, etc.,
That's
etc.
true.
When other people are just as lazy and useless and worthless human beings as the fat people
Yeah, but it's
are.
the biggest
They get
whataboutism
picked
ever.
on
It
more.
doesn't matter.
We just bully those
doesn't
people
matter.
for being lazy and procrastinating too.
Yeah, but it's easy to see that they potentially might be lazy because
They
of the fact
are.
that you don't see all the skinny, lazy
It
bums
doesn't
on
matter.
the
That's such a
street, do you?
stupid fucking whataboutism. I don't know why you even bring it up.
It's not really that dumb. Like the idea is that people will judge fat people for being lazy, even if they're not. Like, listen, yeah, fat people can be lazy, but like the fattest I was almost 400 pounds when I worked like 60 hours a week. Like, yeah, like it's these kind of pretty dumb prescriptions. Like, what is the outcome that like actually makes anything better from this conversation? There's like skinny people who are just skinny because they never had a bad relationship with food. And nobody gives a fuck about their health, but the second they see a fat person, it's not like they're like, oh, that's unhealthy. It's that they're just like, LOL, they start laughing at that person and just like bullying them, which makes them like fucking hate themselves and say like, well, what's the point? I don't really care anymore. It's like weird. It's like, it depends on like what month of the fucking year you're in, where like how like progressive or conservative Destiny decides to be at the time. It's very bizarre because he knows these things, and it's just like every other fucking month. It's just like, oh, how much do I want to, how base do I want to get? Because I've heard him talk about how like part of the reason that he's edgy, heard him like in a conversation somewhat recently, is he wants to make sure that like he appeals to the manosphere in a way where he's like that kind of, he even said the words like pick me, like he's like that pick me leftist, so that he can appeal to them. And then I feel like that's why he gives like these fucking like non-nuanced takes sometimes, even though like he knows when I was in the conversation with him, like he was like fucking much more understanding of what the fuck he was talking about. But it just kind of seems like it just depends on who he's trying to fucking signal to. Not like in a bad way, but I mean, I guess he'd rather do a little more signaling to, oh, we're fighting her again. You know, to the young boys in the manosphere to try to de-radicalize them, I guess is his logic. I don't know.
No, I'm just saying, like, you're using like a visual precursor.
Because a visual precursor can be a decent indicator of somebody's health. Kelly, do you want to bet that we could probably look at most people and get a rough eyeball guesstimate about how healthy they are? You probably can. You probably do that.
You
at a
can be
glance.
lazy, dumb bitch, and be skinny.
You can also, yeah, you can also be incredibly fucking.
Example.
Kicker. Oh my god, I'm getting fucking triggered. I'm so fucking triggered right now. Okay.
I would say that generally, yeah, you can eyeball
this weapon is
someone and
based.
get a pretty
Holy
good
fuck.
idea of whether or not they are healthy or unhealthy.
Sorry.
Generally
Could you
speaking,
want
right? Like, I think that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, no
It's
shit.
pretty
It's fucking
That's
reasonable.
bold.
Obviously, they're outliers. You know, you can have
The idea is like, what does it matter? Like, why do you need to weigh in on every fat person? No pun intended. On like the health of like every fat person is really more of what it is. It's not helpful. It's just concern trolling. You go like, well, it's not healthy to be fat. Like, no shit, we know. Especially if you're like as fat as I am, like, you know, and like you need to get your shit together because you could feel it. It's not just like, oh, you're fat. No, it's like, oh, your toes are tingling if you eat the wrong food. Like, we know. And breaking the habit, it has never been helped by people being like obnoxious about people's weights. That doesn't do anything. So if you actually care, you just stop talking about it because you're really not relevant unless you're asked. But every single time we talk about like, oh, it's not going to be fat, nobody gives like an actual reasonable solution. It's most of the time it's skinny people who've never struggled with their weight talking about being skinny, and they don't actually know what the fuck, like they don't understand what it's like to like have this issue. And like, it's not an excuse. You still got to get your shit together. My wife and I have been going to the gym consistently and like, you know, getting healthier, but like, that's the problem. Is it's a bunch of people who've never struggled with their weight, like talking like they know what the fuck's going on. It's like sometimes you could just like relax, you know. You're not really interested in educating people. You're just saying like obviously a very common like, yeah, no shit, being fat is not good, but you're not really contributing to the conversation. We already know this. This is like a baseline. Okay, so there you go. And like, yeah, there are people who cope and are like, oh, it's okay to be fat, blah 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 blah. Like they're dumb, or they won't say it's okay to be fat because it's like fine, it's okay to exist as a fat person, but they'll be like being fat is like healthy. Obviously, that's wrong, but they won't. Like they'll either only respond to those people because they want to make it seem like that's everybody in like the fat acceptance movement, or when it's like relevant to give advice, they just won't give like decent advice because they don't know any like decent advice like to actually like get their health outcomes better because they've never struggled with like these health outcomes. Like I had a really good fertility doctor my wife and I go to, where she's like, yeah, focus a little less on losing weight and more on getting healthy. I've had a lot of people who lost a lot of weight as my clients. and they come back and they couldn't sustain it, and they just end up fucking up their metabolism. So, you know, like, eat like, you know, greener, like leafier vegetables, like park in the back of the parking lot, try to get to the gym, but like, you know, do something that you think is fun, you know, little things that sound obvious, but like we were just talking about before, how like all those obvious things are really beneficial, and like they agree with that, but it's like a little more nuanced than just lose weight. It's like, oh, here's some protocols that you can engage in. Like if you like dancing, maybe you should dance to lose weight, you know? Shit like that.
Or something that is quite shown on the surface. Or
yeah, true.
Like
wow. Oh my God. You could have AIDS and not see it. True. Yeah. What other things do we want to bring out that obviously we would all agree with?
I said they're outliers.
I said they're outliers.
I'm agreeing with you.
Ridiculous examples, right? You could have an alien that infects your body and a fungal infection about to turn you into a zombie.
Can I just
agreeing with you?
You might have been trolling.
Saying they're outliers.
You might have been trolling. I don't know, but I think this is actually some part of the rhetoric on the left that turns people off, because it almost, even though that's not what you were trying to do, it almost sounds like you guys are denying basic truths, or basically running interference for things that we all know are bad, and by doing it the most disingenuous ways, or some of the ways that seem to appear the most slimy. So like most people who witness these conversations, like what Kelly said, people have seen on CNN and every other news network, where people are like, you know, basically touting out the fat acceptance, and the talking points are the same. And when you hear it, you're just like, why would you say this stuff? Literally everybody listening knows this is pretty much a lie, and it turns people off from the message of the left because it just sounds so pathetic.
Sure.
Does the left do that more than the right, though?
With fat people? Yeah.
I think the left has
on social issues, I would say yes.
The left has a big problem with reality denial sometimes, yes. The right does too, right? It just depends on the issue. But for social issues, it seems like the left has a big problem.
Okay, that's a fair qualifier.
The right does it with like scientific issues for sure, but nobody cares as much about that shit.
Like, I'm in a lot of right-wing spaces. I work with like the local Republicans and stuff like that. Some of our biggest issues come down to the fact that everybody does focus on like being
social shit.
Everyone wants everything. Like, look at the fucking the responses to like social media and shit. Everybody wants to make their own platform. Nobody can just get on the same page. Like, okay, fucking Billy made the first platform. Let's all just go there. No, like there's like 12 fucking answers to Twitch and Twitter and all this crap. It's kind of a big
I would
issue.
say the health at every side stuff is like science denialism, right? To some degree. I guess it can happen, but that's also a much further left thing. I guess I was confusing health at every size versus like beauty on the inside.
You say so. Here's the problem. You say it's a much further left thing, and I don't necessarily disagree. The problem is the left refuses to disavow this stuff. So you look like you're adjacent to it, or you're into it, or you're just quiet about it because you agree. And so the left has been like that about a lot of social issues. They were actually like that with defund the police initially. Like a lot of them probably did disagree, but because they didn't say anything, it made the whole left look bad. Or I just remember that Bernie moment.
That was the whole thing where it's like, no, we just want to reform it. It's like, okay, so then just call it reform the police.
Where he got cooked on stage, and most of the leftists didn't barely say anything. And like everybody knew that was markedly wrong, but because they didn't want to appear to make like super progressives mad, they ended up looking like retards themselves. And so they look like they're all part of the same movement. Their inability to disavow some of the more extreme rhetoric is what leads to them being then judged by that most extreme stuff.
Yeah, that is true. That's an issue. That's something I just frustrates the hell out of me.
Yeah. I think the Kenosha riots.
This person doesn't need to push back
that came up earlier today. I wanted to call it an Ask Your Destiny about like when can we say that it's actually like a moral good if people are causing wanton destruction of your local community to go in armed and like defend the fucking. You know,
I think as an American, depending on the society or because of the society that we sit in, I think you always have the moral authority to do that. I think you should be able to defend your property with your life. Fuck it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would even say even that it's like a moral good.
That's right.
Yeah, of course, I would say so. Yeah,
I should be able to defend my wife.
That means that white militiamen need to step two.
Do the thing.
Ultimately, I think like a lot of the people that participated in the Kenosha riots, I think ultimately like left-leaning people, part of the aesthetic that Democrats sell or that is sold in liberalism or something is like moral superiority that's secular over conservatives or something like that. And so I do think there's maybe a propensity to start accepting things that seem nicer on its face or something. That's probably what has more to do with things like. Like people accepting that riots are good or something like that if it tears down an oppressive system. Probably most of those people were Democrats before then or something like that. But then I think there was a lot of bandwagoning and like wrangling by more further leftists or something like that sort of took advantage of the goodwill of like left-wing people at large. That's in response to ABBA when I said, it's like further left people, and you said, yeah, but it's also like mainstream Democrat people too. And I think that's
this is something I brought up before. The thing I think I identified this like 3 or 4 months ago, that the problem with these fringe left positions is that even though they are fringe, it seems like most people on the left will defend them. So like there isn't this epidemic of people coming out with 4-year-old trans kids. It's incredibly rare. But they're like when somebody comes out and does say it, it seems like everybody on the left online wants to defend it. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, okay, these guys are kind of wacky, and then moving on.
It's definitely wacky.
Yeah, that's what gives conservatives the ammunition. Like that Libs of TikTok account, that shit that account posts, everybody should look at it and be like, most of the shit is kind of wacky, and then boom, then you move on. But when you defend it, you give conservatives ammunition to feel like there's like a huge movement behind the stuff that's going on.
That makes sense.
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
I feel the same way about the whole.
That seems to be team sports in general, because conservatives also will just either ignore or even forgive the more extreme positions on their end as well.
The fervent defense of Donald Trump, Andrew Tate,
Yeah, and like overlooking like
I guess
legitimate white supremacists in the movement and shit.
Yeah, I guess that does happen on the conservative side too. That's fair. That's just people. Usually, I think I hope think that that's like less acceptable. Another fire-seeking arrow.
Like it just seems to exist in team sports across the spectrum. It doesn't matter which side you're on. The difference is, I would say, for like the left, what I perceive is that the fringe left will demonize the not so fringe left. So they'll demonize those who are not.
That happens with Republicans too. They're just just a little because all there's tons of infighting.
Yeah, it's not quite as vicious, I would say, but yeah, it's definitely growing.
Infighting.
They're just not on the public platforms as much doing it.
Yeah,
they're fucking just all over everything.
It tends to be more detrimental on the left when it happens.
Yeah.
You just keep.
I mean, I don't know. We're saying that now, but in 1 year, like the Republican Party might be torn asunder from the Trump shit. So we'll see.
Are they getting each other fired from each other's jobs?
It's not about getting fired from jobs. Like I'm pretty sure. Didn't Trump just call DeSantis a groomer?
Whoa!
Yeah, he also called him. He called him Meatball Ron, which I think is a great.
He hasn't even declared the fucking.
Yeah, so that shit might
be.
That might be like the most bloody primary like in conservative history.
Yeah, I think if you compare the entire gamut of like the left-leaning representatives in Congress, from the squad to the most establishment Dems or whatever, compared to the right, yeah, it definitely looks like there's a lot more cohesion on the left right now.
Come on, just land.
Nah.
Oh, there's a massive war going on the right now.
Have you heard of like MTG and George Santos and holy shit,
yeah, for the mainstream politics, it's a massive fucking war.
What's the furthest left congressperson GSU Gambit?
Hello, Mel.
AOC is a Demsoc, right? So AOC would be the furthest.
Yeah,
bro, how'd that fucking hit me? This game is stupid.
How does he vote in line with them? Is there a lot of like
cheating
between AOC and the rest of the the Democrats?
Oh well, when you say party, if you only talk about the politicians themselves, then maybe I could definitely agree with you on that because they couldn't even confirm like a minority, right? So yeah, if we're talking,
that was wild.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Interesting video.
I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.